morning. I was had dinner last night in Orlando. There was a major accident on the turnpike, and I was there from 10:20 until about 4:20 this morning. So I'm a little bit perturbed at the Turnpike Authority and the Highway Patrol at this point. I got about an hour and a half, 2 hours of sleep, but I'll make it. And look, I was the first one here.
I was going to say, you two did all this to
so
make
I
us feel,
wanted to say that
make us late
to make sure that
that
you knew that Mr. Thacker and Mr. Weisshire did not beat me here this morning, even after that. So I know my wife and I were very chipper this morning. So
Do you need a hug?
don't touch me. No.
Don't.
So I appreciate all of you being here. Thank you very much. It will just be the three of us today, as Mr. Wheeler is out of town and Mr. Soto had something come up. So with that, Dr. Pace.
Good morning, board members, and we appreciate this opportunity to come before you and share some of the great work that's been happening since we had our last strategic plan update in January. We have tried to simplify the documents that we've provided for you so that it avoids some of the redundancies, and so you'll not see some of the things that were there before that we accomplished in our first half of the year. But just to kind of make you familiar with the way this is set up, we have our PowerPoint that the team will walk through with the bullets that you have a copy of in front of you. You also have our strategic plan second half of the year summary, and so you'll see again some of those same bullet sheets, some additional data, as well as some next steps. So this is a little bit more comprehensive than what we have prepared for you on the PowerPoint, but we have both documents there for your review and also for questions both now and then later discussion when we meet in our strategic plan retreat to talk about where we are, where we want to go, and what next steps would be for our third year of the strategic plan. In addition, I provided for you the summary comparison data that we just got last week for our FSA results. Somewhat disappointing in some respects, but certainly not indicative of the level of hard work that both this district leadership team and our principals and teachers have engaged in throughout the year. Just to give you a few of the highlights before the team begins, we saw increases for ELA in grades 5, 8, and 10. In grade 5, it increased by 2%, and in grade 8, 4%. And in math, we saw increases at grades 5, 6, and 7. Grade 5, again, impressive with a 3% gain, and grade 6 with 2%. And keep in mind, board members, that this is the raw data. This is everybody that was tested, but we have listed traditionally the districts in our Central Florida area that we compare ourselves to. And we've added an additional district this year, that's Pasco County. Because number one, they are very close to us in size with the growth that they have shown and that we have shown over the last few years. They also are rapidly growing like we are, and we have a lot of similarities in the students that we serve, and they're doing some good things with curriculum. So we want to make sure that we're measuring ourselves against some of the best. In addition, middle school geometry showed an increase of 2%, and we had more students taking geometry in middle school this year than in prior years. And our Algebra 1 first-time test takers increased in proficiency by 5%. We think that's a pretty impressive gain. Now, we showed some declines in geometry, but keep in mind that this is the last year of kind of the cleanup from the district's experiment with the Algebra 1A, Algebra 1B geometry course progression. And so I will close there and turn it over to Dr. Respis, who will start with Academic Success Goal 1A, our literacy goal. And again, please interrupt us since it's the three of us, we can have, or the three of you, we can have all kinds of questions and answers as we move throughout the process, unless, Chairman, you want to do it differently.
No, sounds good.
Okay.
Good morning. Nice to see all of you this morning. First, I want to show you what is there. If you look at our scores from last year, and Dr. Pace kind of alluded to it in the 2016-17 where we were. There you go. And then if you compare where we are right now, we are the far right. We are still working on disaggregating the scores from 4th through 10th grade. Our predicted results in 3rd grade have us going at 55% at grade level or above, and we're still looking at our disaggregating our raw data to get those other numbers for you so that we have what our predicted results will be. But to echo what Dr. Pace shared, in grades 5, 8, and 10, we have, even with the raw data, we have increased from where we were last year. I wanted to highlight about 6 areas within literacy specifically. that we really had a huge focus this year. Our classroom visits during our learning cycles that we revamped increased tremendously. We had over 5,900 classroom visits as opposed to the previous year where we had 2,800. So we more than doubled in the number of classroom visitations, and that was based on how we organized our learning cycles K-12. In our ELA classrooms alone that focused on literacy, we had over 2,300 visitations to there. The next bullet is related to our kindergarten readiness rate. And I want to share with you that was new this year, updated, I should say. They used to do kindergarten readiness rates back in 2012, 2013 was the last time we got them with a different test. And now we have it with the STAR literacy test, and they call it Flickers also. And they have come up with the readiness rate of 60% from the state that each school is looked at. And that is considered, if the school scores at 60%, then that is considered ready, or if a student does.
Is that higher than it was the last time the numbers came up?
So that is going to look different. It will look lower. It is different. It is comparing, it was a totally different test. So
we have no, my point would be to gauge the footsteps to brilliance, so now we don't really have a benchmark.
Dr. Rasmus and Ms. Rodriguez and I talked about that yesterday. At that point in time, they were using a totally different test, and in kindergarten readiness came out at like 80%.
it was it was good.
But we don't believe that this is comparing apples to oranges in terms of are we doing better or are we doing worse.
Okay.
So what we're really using this right now is as a baseline, and also to compare ourselves to other VPK programs across the county, and to make sure that we look at those ones that are not quite at that 60%, to make sure that we're intervening appropriately with curriculum and consistency in the instruction.
Okay.
Thank you.
The readiness rate is considered 60%. Does that mean there's 60% of the kids are ready, or what is that?
So that they 60%, they know 60% of everything on that. So 60%, yes. If 60% are ready, yes.
So they got a 60%. So the kids took the test, got a 60% on it, and that's considered ready.
That is considered ready. Any other questions?
Just to be clear, it's not that 60% of the kids are ready. I'm just getting conflicting.
Well, the readiness rate means that 60% of the students that participated in that VPK are ready for kindergarten.
Right, not what they score, but that they're actually
Right,
ready.
not the score. The score, they have to score about 500 on the STAR literacy test. 500 or above makes them ready.
Okay, thank you.
But the state is using
Thank
this
you.
measure. I thank you for clarifying that, because I wasn't sure I understood it in the beginning. But the state uses this as a measurement for VPK programs, both private and public. And so they're looking at least 60% of the students who started in that VPK program and finishing it are at least those 60% of those students are ready for kindergarten. And if not, we're looking at interventions that we need to add into those programs to help support that.
Is that intuitively only having 6 out of 10 kids
10
ready
kids is
does not
not.
sound that great to me. I mean,
That's not where we want it to be, for
Okay.
sure. We want it back up in the 80s and 90s, to 100% for sure, back where we were.
Now, I
Right.
understand there's some significant challenges in improving that, because there's so many variables that are outside of our control and outside the control of the people that are working on that. But I imagine that, we look at 16 and 9, we're below the 60%. There's strategies being put in place right now to figure out what we can do to continue to improve that. The 60% from the state, I think maybe even to your point, is irrelevant to us. And I would say us,
Right.
all of us, none of us are satisfied with that.
Right.
So if the state says 60%, we want to be 70, we want to be 80, we want to
Right.
be 90, right? So we're looking at specific strategies. And I think part of the key will be, because we talk so much about the importance of early childhood readiness, that if we don't figure out how to move the needle on this significantly, we're all just going to be struggling for the lifeblood of those students for the next 13 years. So,
Right.
okay.
That's one of the things that we really noticed. We're not yet at math. That's our next page. But if you look at the second page of the scores I gave you, our math scores, the very first time our students are assessed in 3rd grade math, we're 10 points below the state average. And we're working over time to try to close that gap and get us to at least that state average or even higher. So we know that some of our students struggle in the beginning.
Right.
the positive results that we have in terms of graduation rate and college and career readiness and those types of things, we know we're getting there by the end. But it is a longer journey and a bigger hurdle. So this is a big, important number to move. And Mary Ann and Dr. Respis and the team are working diligently on that.
Yeah, and I think part of it too, this is my personal belief, but I genuinely believe it is the right belief for all of us. The message that we have to send is that parents need to parent and parents need to teach, and they need to understand that the importance of the time they spend with their students in those early years are so incredibly important, and that we can't carry the burden for everybody on these type of things. We're going to do everything we can with the resources we have to make sure our students are able to enter school prepared, but we all have to be that voice in the community that's willing to be bold and strong and courageous and say the things to people that they just genuinely don't want to hear, which is the reason this is what it is because at home, mom and dad aren't doing what they need to do to make sure that Johnny and Susie are ready to enter school. And that ultimately is the responsibility. We're here to supplement, support that, but the onus and the responsibility squarely falls on the shoulders of the parents to make sure that they're preparing their students. So we've got to find the way of making sure that we're the voice piece for the community with that as well. Everything else that we do as a school district really hinges upon so much of this because of the early years and the important role that they play in the child's life. So I don't want to, my point in hitting on this, I guess, early in the presentation isn't to say, well, you know, we got to get better and we do, but we've got to make sure that we're the right voice in the community, because otherwise what's going to happen is everyone will blame us as a district for the lack of growth or preparedness or readiness of our students and the gains that we struggle to continue to make as a result of what we inherit. But if we don't take that bold step initially to have the conversation community, we're not doing a real service to our community. So.
Well, and I think too, our partnership with the Early Learning Coalition is a critical element of that, because we all need to be on the same message, and that is something that we're working continuously to strengthen.
Okay.
I know we talked about this a couple months ago or sometime. I just can't remember now. Do we have any data or anything on Footsteps to Brilliance on usage and whether it's helping or not helping and the volume of people using it?
The volume of usage for Footsteps to Brilliance continue to increase significantly. We've done a great job in terms of getting that user component up through the work with REACH and the Early Learning Coalition and Mary Ann and her staff, particularly in that 3 to 5, even before they're getting into our kindergarten program. The challenge that we have is that there's not a diagnostic tool within Footsteps to Brilliance to talk about the quality of time that they're spending on Footsteps to Brilliance or the impact that it's actually having on learning. That's the challenge with that particular program as it's set up. But we are exceeding the usage goals both within the district and in the community.
Is that company looking at some kind of evaluation metrics for their?
We continue to push on that.
We continue to push on it. Right now, that they do not have that.
When you push, are they saying, yes, we agree, or are they saying, yeah, right?
Go ahead, Marion.
I was asking if the Footsteps Brilliant, the ownership agrees that they need a assessment component, and they said you've been pushing on that, but when you push, are they saying, yes, we agree, or are they saying?
They say, yes, we agree, but the product is not there yet.
Okay. I guess my question, are they working on a product?
They say they are.
Okay.
We did recently get success with them on getting a push message that can be sent out. So say you sign your kid up at an event at the community center or at the park to use Footsteps to Brilliance. The idea is not just that you've signed up to use it, but that they're coming back to the program and engaging on it when mommy's in line at Publix or, you know, out to dinner or whatever. And so that we've now gotten a system into place where it can send a push message, just like you get maybe on Duolingo that says, hey, you haven't logged in 5 days or 30 days or whatever. Don't forget to clue into Footsteps to Brilliance. So that's a recent improvement that we were able to argue for.
And that goes to the parents and the kids?
Goes to the device.
Okay.
When is that contract?
We're, this is the third year of that contract.
Of 5?
5. Dr. Respis?
Yes, ma'am. So yes, we do have plans in place, absolutely, and I can talk to you to you about that in more detail at any time. Our third grade FSA ELA scores are predicted, as you saw in the previous chart, with a 2% increase. We had, as we talked about portfolios in the past, when we think about portfolios with our third grade students, we really need to think of those as concorded scores, like concorded scores that we have in secondary and high school so that students can graduate. So our third grade students, that has been a big push, and that we are able to say proudly that we have 80% of our third graders who were able to complete a portfolio during the year and remain with their cohort to go on to fourth grade. We're very pleased about that. In our juniors, also, we have concordant scores for 72% of them have already met the graduation requirement with their SAT score. 72% of our juniors already, so that is awesome. And of our at-risk seniors, we have 39% who met the graduation rate, earning that concordant score on the SAT, and that really speaks to that day, spending that time for that day, and that was very
SAT
well
school
spent.
day, yeah,
Yes.
But you all are very generous and help us to fund, so we appreciate it because it really does help the kids to get them ready for graduation.
What's the goal on that number? It's 39%. I mean, obviously 100 is the goal, but I mean, what is the target? What is the expectation?
Honestly, if we got 10%, that would be amazing. The fact that we got 39 and 41% the year before is incredible, because these are kids who have taken the FSA so many multiple times that there's almost a block there. And the FSA, to be honest, doesn't go on a transcript outside of the K-12 system. Universities don't really even pay attention to it. So for us to get 39% of those kids that have been blocked, at this point, that's our last shot. And so for us capturing 39%, that gain that you saw with the 4.3% in 1 year with the graduation rate was because of the 41% the year before. So.
And one of the things I think we are doing better because we're offering the SAT school day for the juniors. We're having more students attain that concordance score as juniors, which means less students need to get it as seniors. So when we first started it, we were just doing that for our seniors. So you're going to see that percentage for the seniors go down because that's our most critically struggling. Yeah, they're getting ahead, exactly.
But if you look on page 8 in your book, it shares with you that last year's juniors, we had only 62% achieve that concordance score on the first time, and this year we're up at the 72% number. So that's 72% of the students who are moving into their senior year who've already knocked out in either the FSA or the SAT that graduation requirement, which gives us a fewer number that we have to really concentrate on in their senior year to get them ready for graduation with their cohort.
And a lot of these also probably have the FSA scores and stuff too.
Yes,
Okay.
this isn't their only job, but this is also then, they're at that or above to continue. to
The
move forward.
at-risk, though, to point that out, we only tested kids that still needed the FSA requirement. on that
That's
one.
300
So
and
those
some
are
odd.
those seniors.
Right.
Yeah.
And a year ago, at this point in time, we had almost 600, if you notice, of those seniors, the 583, compared to 372. So that number is coming down as we get that out of the way early, which frees up their schedule for additional elective CTE opportunities, those types of things.
And before I hand it over, I will tell you, I will do a little board update for you about the readiness rate, and if you like, and just so you have a better idea of how that's calculated.
And I think, too, some additional information about what we're doing to strengthen the curriculum and
Absolutely.
next year. Okay?
And I may have missed this, I was reading over here, but
That's okay.
do we know how our readiness rate, compares at each school with private, public? I mean, we know the kids at, Harmony VPK or
Yes.
Deerwood or wherever. We know what their readiness rate specifically was.
We do.
And we have that comparison to our local private providers. Unfortunately, they have not been able to, or they have not provided for us a state average or
a
even
district.
other district data. We only got the data for our local Osceola County VPK providers.
Yes, but I will include that in the report,
Okay.
what each
Thank you.
school scored. Okay? And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Reinhardt.
Good morning, everyone. So we're going to kind of move on to strategy B. math proficiency, and that first chart that you see on the next slide in the PowerPoint, again, sort of compares. On the left-hand side, you'll see our FSA math data for each grade level from last year, and then our iReady data for our K through, well, it's actually showing you 3 through 8 students as we have looked at those diagnostic tests throughout the year. And again, I think Dr. Pace talked about some of the highlights, but in 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, and our Algebra 1 EOC, our raw data, which includes all of our students who tested, and which isn't necessarily, it also includes all of our charter schools. So that's all, everything, that those grade levels are already above where we were last year. So we think those are some positive points that we want to point out.
8th grade?
8th grade is not above currently where we were last year. But again, that data is not match students. They're going to count in the school grade. It includes every student, no matter when they came this school year. If they tested on the FSA, they're included in this data. So it will, as the districts work to, as the schools work to clean their data, that number is going to change. We just don't have that yet.
So, tell me if I'm looking at this thing right. We've got this schedule here that's got your predicted proficiencies.
From the iReady data, yes.
In iReady. Can we pencil in these next to it at this point as the actuals or not?
Well, I can give you the raw data scores so that what our proficiency was for every student who tested. I can give you that. So if you want me, I can go through those and.
But there is a challenge in that we are not seeing the correlation that we did last year between our
Yeah,
RA
that's
data
what I'm looking
and our
at.
FSA data.
The very first one.
Yes.
I don't know that I'm reading.
Wait.
No, I think,
Grade
well,
3 is a 51 compared
that's
to a
correct.
65.
No, you are
Right,
reading that.
By
exactly.
prediction, that's a pretty big miss.
It is a big miss. That's one of the concerns that we have. We got this data so late on Thursday, we didn't change the PowerPoint,
No,
so to
that's
speak,
fine.
but that's why I provided you this additional sheet.
because we've
That is an
actually-
area that we are concerned about.
In grade 7, we got a prediction of 47 out of 29.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And our REA department's running the analysis for us as of now, so we can see what the distance was between the iReady and the actual scores. So we'll be able to have that.
Last year, they really measured up with the standard error of measurement, but this time right now, they're off considerably.
And that's a iReady system-wide problem, I imagine, right? Not an Osceola problem.
We don't know yet, but we know it's true across the board with our 3 through 8.
I'm assuming there's lots of other districts in the state using this.
Yes.
Yeah, they're in all but like 7
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting. I'm hoping that they're all showing this similar.
I know that when I had a very brief conversation with Dr. Grego last Thursday, he was concerned as well, and Pinellas is using the iReady data.
Mr. Thacker, if I may, the 7th grade is an anomaly. You're correct. There are larger variations between the iReady scores matching to the current, but the 7th grade is going to look different because about half of our 7th grade students are in 7th grade advanced math. They actually take the 8th grade FSA because the standards for the 7th grade advanced test class match the 8th grade FSA.
So we've taken the better math students from grade 7 and
The higher achieving math students.
They've accelerated, right.
Some of those students actually take algebra too. The highest performing students take algebra, so they're out of it completely as well.
Correct.
So are other districts not doing that?
It varies around the
Because
state.
when you look at this,
Right.
I mean, that's a pretty big outlier.
Yes.
It doesn't seem logical.
There are districts that don't offer geometry in middle school. There's still a few that don't. Last check, Hillsborough County was one of those that didn't do that. They just did algebra, so.
If we go on to the next slide, I just want to hit a few key highlights this year. As you know, math has been a huge emphasis for us. We developed our first ever pre-K to 12 district math plan. We're currently looking at throughout the summer, we're looking at reflecting on it, revising on it. One of the things we're really looking very carefully at is some progress monitoring tools that we can use, especially for our Algebra 1, geometry, potentially even our Algebra 2 students. That, I think, is one of our challenges, is being able to know where our students are and trying to predict that proficiency on those EOC exams. So we're really spending some time this summer digging into that. We have obviously paid a lot more attention. As you look, we've completed our 7 learning cycles. We have over 1,500 classes, math classrooms, that were visited this year and that's, K through 12. So that's more classrooms than ever as we're looking at really alignment to the standards, trying to look at the scale use, many of those pieces. We also had our first ever ESET 2 symposium, Elevating Teachers. We had that in January, and we had the emphasis at that was on mathematics. So 189 teachers and administrators attended that, and we had Julie Dixon, who's a renowned math expert. She spoke to the teachers and the administrators there. Just exciting stuff going on, trying to really focus on math discourse and a real alignment to the standards. So a couple of next steps in terms of our mathematics is we'll be expanding 10 marks to all of our elementary schools in the next year, and we've been providing a lot of intensive training. You'll see a lot of detail about that if you look in the booklet. Throughout the summer, we've had Carnegie Learning coming in and providing specific training for our Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, and college level math for the high school teachers. And we've been doing standards-based training for all levels so that we help our teachers to understand the alignment, developing scales, how do they get student tasks that are aligned directly to the standards. That's been a real focus. So working with Math Nation also to really provide resources for our teachers.
Dr. Reiner.
I've got a question for you. Several times in the presentation today, we've talked about classroom visits. Probably have a really stupid question, but can you tell me or explain to me, clearly you see the visits as a very positive thing. What happens in or after a classroom visit that would be changing performance? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It's
Before you answer that, because I was going to ask something similar, which is my understanding is we changed the way we're doing the visits, right? And so I think the distinction between what was and what is would be a key point
Yeah,
to
if you
that
can
answer.
explain that whole thing
Yeah.
so I can understand.
Sure. So what happened prior was we sort of had we went in at one time, took data at schools, and then we really weren't back collecting any more data to see if there was any impact on the professional development that was being provided for teachers or administrators. So now this is really ongoing. We go in, we walk, whether it's our resource teachers, whether it's us, whether it's our directors. We have folks that are walking classrooms from the ESE department, from CTE. We're all in there just trying to look to see where's the support that we need to provide for teachers, and that's ongoing. So it doesn't just happen in August and then we, hope and pray we figure it out before the end of the year. We're constantly looking to see where do we need to provide support, how do we modify our professional development or support for the teachers. Conversations are happening with administrators. So even that data is being used. Dr. Pace and Dr. Fritz both, they go in too, and we look at where do we need to provide the most support, how do we tier that support for our schools. We went in twice this year where we visited every single classroom in every school. We did that at baseline and we did it at a mid-year. But we're collecting data in between as well. We do those learning cycle visits. So does that help? Or
Yeah, another question though. If we went and asked 10 teachers at random, did you have classroom visits this year? Yes, I had 2. Did you learn anything from those? Do you think the answers would be pretty high? Oh yeah, that really helped me do this, or I learned this.
I hope so, yes. And I think in 2 reasons.
I mean, I hope so too. If not, they're not. But it's not getting back, I guess.
I don't think we go back and say.
I don't have any reason to believe it's not.
No, I understand. I understand completely. I mean, it informs our practice so that when we go back, we know exactly how to help and support the teachers. It's not meant at all to be, let me go back and tell you everything you did wrong or everything you did right. But it really does help us to say, hey, scales maybe we're not seeing them, we're not seeing the kids use them, so we know we need to provide more support. They're not understanding the purpose or the use for those, and then it also helps us to work with our administrators and our coaches. So a lot of our schools have coaches. They can go back and another layer of support that goes in. So I don't know that it's directly that they would say, oh yeah, somebody came back and shared the exact data with me, because it's trend data for a school, so we don't provide it classroom by classroom.
Okay.
We definitely rely on our principals, because they have the rapport and the relationships with our teachers. So a lot of our coaching, to Dr. Reinhardt's point, is with the administrators. So when we walk in, if Dr. Pace is the principal and I'm walking through, then Dr. Pace and I walk through the classes, and we'll look for some trends that we're seeing, and then I'm sharing my feedbacks with Dr. Pace. There's an instrument that we use when we walk into a classroom that we've designed. We look for things. If we're seeing things, we calculate that. All that goes into the data that you see in front of you, and that's part of what we talk to them about, because it really is about, if teachers receive feedback if they believe there's trust, and the person they trust the most on the school campus are their administrators. We're the district folks coming through, so a lot of what we do is coaching them up.
But another big component of this is that the data that we collect during these learning cycle walks has directed the work of the resource teachers. You know, the folks upstairs are not upstairs. They're in buildings following these learning cycle walks, either providing professional development, either coaching and modeling within the classroom, working side by side with teachers to engage kids. But that's the important piece, is that we come, we work on data, we talk about it with the administrator, but then the resource teachers follow back up, particularly in our schools that are in need of the most support, to try to impact practice. And I think that's a big component of it.
Yeah, Dr. Pace and I talked about this recently with leveraging the opportunity with the administrators as well as the coaches on campus to truly be coaches. And you think about the term of what a coach is, it's to actually help improve and move performance in the right direction. And my question was, are our coaches really able to help move the needle in the areas they need to, and are they really driving the results that we need to see? And that wasn't a critical question as much as it was just a conversational point. So I think that's the piece for me is we see, we evaluate, we understand, we communicate, we align the resources upstairs, and then we empower at the campus level through the administrator and the coaches to make sure that the right work is happening and the right support is available. If that's not happening, then to your point, Mr. Thacker, I think there's a major disconnect in the system, because that's the whole purpose of having these various tenets, if you will, of the organization there to support that learning. So if that isn't happening, that's part of what you and I were talking about, is making sure that the system is put in place in the right way to actually help, truly help. I operate under the premise, as I know we all do around the table, that our teachers genuinely care, they genuinely want to do good, and they really want to be effective in what they're doing to help students learn and achieve. And all of us need help in life in every area. It doesn't matter what it is. So if we have those support pieces in place to support and to help empower them to be more effective, the hope is that it would be given with love and received with love, and that both parts of the system, if you will, would align with one another. Say, you know what, it's not about my ego, it's not about your ego, it's about how do we work together to do the best thing for the child or the children that we're serving. So my hope, to your point, is that all the feedback is then being aligned to really drive the ultimate support that we need to do for the benefit of the kid and the family.
And this week we have a coaching academy in addition to our administrator academy, where they're going to be working with some of Jen Knight's work. He's one of the best in terms of helping to provide that coaching skills and coaching feedback piece, as well as then they'll have a session with Mike Matos, our speaker from Learning Tree, that the principals are going to hear as well. So.
And is there, the note I made was the ESET 2, we talked briefly about that. The goal is to try to expand that. I know we're limited on space, on budget, and some number of components. I loved the energy that was in the room that day, to be really honest with you. I'm hoping that the energy kind of spilled over into the schools and what was happening in the classrooms. But these are the type of things that I think are really valuable when we can kind of grab some of our team across the district and empower them and celebrate them, and to encourage them and to provide them with the tools or resources, or even the collaboration amongst themselves as peers, to really say, you know what, we're part of something that's so important, we want to work together to do it. So my point to the superintendent was, I'd love to see stuff like that expanded. I think there's really cool opportunities with that. So.
Yeah, a lot of energy that day for sure. Okay, I'll go ahead and we'll move on to strategy C, which is our college and career readiness. So, you know, the components here, we share a lot of data in this area. We track a lot of data on this one, particularly K through 12. So I kind of just want to point out, first of all, at our elementary schools, some of the final results from the gifted information that we have currently. This has been updated slightly. You'll see the date of May 25th from what is in your booklet. So you'll see a little bit of difference here. But we were able to screen second graders in all of our title schools this year. Over 2,700 of them were screened, and 228 students were referred for further gifted testing. And our number of students who've qualified thus far that we have is 77. And I believe I don't even think we have all of the students even through the process yet.
No, we don't. We're still in the process of getting the psychologicals completed.
So I believe we'll be able to, when we update you the next time, we'll have a better idea about being able to provide you some comparative data as well as some of our subgroup data we'll be able to provide. That's pretty exciting results so far. And one of the things you'll hear about our next steps is we're going to be able to expand that gifted screening to all of our elementary schools next year. Also, obviously, we have a great emphasis in our middle school as well with our academically competitive students who took the SAT, our Osceola Duke TIP program. We went from 88 students that took the test last year to 125 students this year, which was a 110% increase. So
185.
Oh, was it 185?
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's exciting and even better. So there. Good job. If you look at the next slide, you'll see a lot of our data that we're tracking in our high schools. That we've been, for the most part, all of our college and career counselors in our high school, along with their guidance counselor cohorts, have been tracking this data. So lots of great stuff to share here. Our AA degrees have increased. You'll see kind of the 3-year trend there, but we had a 437% increase since 2016 in our AA degrees. So huge emphasis there. Our Got College and all of our initiatives. Our dual enrollment students, we're tracking those at both Valencia and the University of Florida, and you'll see nice increases there as well in both areas.
Let me tie that to something Mr. Weishauer said as well. Those students that are taking the SAT in 11th and 12th grade that weren't given that opportunity before are qualifying. As we're meeting with Valencia, their enrollment numbers are going through the roof, and that we're doing more dual enrollment opportunities even during the dual school day. But they're very supportive of that process. Part of our monthly meetings with them is the number of students that are qualifying. And the kids that go to Valencia are local kids. They end up staying here. So I just wanted to point that out, that they increase.
Good.
Absolutely. And then you'll see on our next chart there our acceptances of our seniors who have been accepted to top 100 schools. Again, has increased over the 3 years from 263 to 395, a 50% increase. And then one of the other pieces of data that we track that's very important to all of us is our FAFSA completions, as well as our scholarships that have been awarded. So you can see in the first column there under FAFSA completions that we've increased from 55% to 57% of our seniors completing. And then on our second column, you can see our scholarships we're over $62 million in scholarships, and we're continuing to track that. And one of the pieces that we're adding in this year, next steps, is all of our comprehensive high schools and magnet high schools will be using our Naviance program. And you'll see Mr. Cook is out there. He's our new coordinator for college and career. We're super excited because he's going to really lead us in that initiative to making sure that that data is tracked well and that program's being used to help with those
You have some
post-secondary
big trends to push up.
He's up to the challenge, though. He is going to do it.
But
He
you know,
can
one
do
of the
it.
things too I want to point out about that FAFSA completion number, you know, we worry because our college going rate, you know, was at 41% a while ago, and that is always lag data in terms of actually getting those official numbers from the state. But when you've got 57% of your students completing the FAFSA form, you're going to have close to 57%, if not all 57%, matriculating on into a college and university program somewhere. So we're really excited about what those numbers we believe are going to be like and what it means for future opportunities for our kids.
A lot better than the 41%.
Yeah.
We've increased from 62nd in the state to 27th as far as.
And that's with the lag data. This doesn't include where we are, where we think we are today.
Right, it's 2-year lag, yeah, so it's really.
Two questions on the slide that's still on the screen. The dual enrollment, are we tracking and do we have the ability to track the number of credit hours that students, you know, we say participating, how many credit hours are actually earning? And is there a benchmark that we have that says in order, look, I understand that the easy answer is if they're enrolled in any Valencia or dual enrollment class or a dual enrollment student, we count them, check the box. But is there a minimum threshold, like we want to see students get 5 classes or 15 credit hours, or is there some measurement we're using there?
I think you have to be careful with that.
I'm just picking a number.
Right, exactly. Because some students will take a blend very strategically of dual enrollment and advanced placement or IB. Some students want to go full-time dual enrollment, and those kids we want to make sure we're tracking to get an AA. In the past, if counselors weren't careful, they were just picking whatever class was convenient for their schedule. Instead, we want to be very strategic to make sure that they're meeting the requirements to get to that AA degree or to get close. to that if they're going to be a full-time dual enrollment student. But if they want to stay engaged on the high school campus and take that blend of courses, AP and DE and IB or whatever, there's not necessarily a magic number. I know for my own students, you know, one of them chose to do dual enrollment one class in the summer because she wanted to continue to be an intern or something, and because of her involvement in the swim program. But other than that, she was primarily engaged in AP. So there's not like a magic number for those students who are taking a blend, but for our full-time kids, they need to be taking 12 to 15 hours a semester.
Is it wrong of me to think that having a student, and I know we don't do this, but I'm going to ask it, having a student take a dual enrollment class just so we can say we have more students taking dual enrollment isn't the right answer?
No, we're not
And
doing
so
that.
I know we're not doing it, but my point would be is that when we talk about the movement in dual enrollment, the idea is that we're helping these students create that pathway, make the connections, save money, align resources, right? But if we on our side of the table go, oh, well, the number's up 32% at Valencia, but that's just, you know, an extra 75 kids that took one class, but it wasn't even the right class, we're looking at it as, wow, we did great, but in reality, we didn't really move the needle for that child.
Very intentional, and I'll tell you, we are stricter with our admittance to dual enrollment in the county of North. We actually went back to our agreement and we put teeth into it to make sure that we're only putting the right kids forward on that. Up in the North, if they pass the algebra EOC exam, they let them take a dual enrollment.
Okay.
And we have not done that. We said we want them to complete Algebra 2. We want to make sure that they're in good academic standing with a 3.0. We have really, and we said when they take a course, it needs to be the right course. It needs to either be an English course or a math course.
So we just had that conversation about making sure that the students are taking a core elective, that we're not doing anything that would endanger plans 2 years down the road after they're left us, that we want to make sure they're getting themselves either lined for that AA or whatever they need, whatever the pathways they're hopefully going to choose, even when they direct connect to UCF or wherever they want to go. We don't want them taking courses.
I
so.
just know there's always a lot of pressure on all of us with regard to growth and numbers. And if we focus on the growth and the numbers, but we don't really look at the breadth and the impact of what it is that we're actually doing, we may not really be making measurable improvements in the life of that child or for that family. But on paper, it looks like we're doing amazing. And I'm not implying that's the case. I just think it's an important, it sounds like we're all singing from the same sheet of music, so that's great. Let me move to the next thing. In the scholarship part, I imagine that when we look at these scholarship numbers, these are also sometimes double, triple, and quadruple counts because it's one student, like our Yale student who got, you know, $10 million in scholarship, not really, but you know what I mean?
Multiple
like,
offers.
So I think it would be good data for us as well, and I don't know exactly if you guys have the ability to do this, to be able to look at, you know, on a per student basis or a student average or some way of breaking that out, because what we could potentially have is those numbers increase, but they increase because 20 kids are now getting multiples and multiples and multiple high dollar offers from colleges and universities around the country. We're aggregating the number and it looks great on paper, 55 to 62, but in reality, it may not have really gone wider throughout the student body. And I know that's not the case here because I know it has, but I think that's an important piece for us to really look at. Again, when we celebrate numbers, it's great. I just want to make sure we understand what it is that we're celebrating and we're not kind of double counting or triple counting something.
Well, I think that's why it's important to look at both the number of students accepted to a top 100 school and to make sure that number is going up, as well as the scholarship number, because those should really be moving hand in hand,
Yeah,
not
and that's
one not moving without the other.
I think we could do both.
I've got a soapbox moment here, and I just want to say this because I've had this conversation before with other folks in education. Just the same way I struggle with 3,000 seat high schools, the same issues, I still take issue at sometimes with 16 and 17-year-old college students and 20-year-old college graduates. For me, I still struggle with saying we're pushing these kids. You're not even going to show up on campus for your senior year. You're not going to engage in what's going on in high school and be a high school student at 17 and 18-year-old. I still struggle with that, and I know we push the numbers, and I know when we want to get them the free dual enrollment, I get all that. But I really struggle with 17-year-old college students and 20-year-old college graduates. neither one of them are really ready for either thing, in my opinion.
And we totally understand, and that's why we do try to work individually
it.
with the kids. That's why I
I'm
think our
done.
guidance counselors and the focus that you guys have put on counseling is a very important piece, because each kid is different. You know, some kids want to stay involved on campus and yet still be academically pushing forward. And some kids will graduate with their AA degree and still take longer to finish their undergraduate because they want to prepare for something like med school,
Yeah.
like,
No, I
like my
understand.
daughter did.
I understand. There's very few
but-
Libby's in the world.
But, you know, it's a totally different thing, and for the 43 kids who graduated with that AA degree, that's $5,000 to $6,000 in those families' pockets that will help
I get
carry
it.
them for the future. And
And-
we know in
and
our
that's the good
community,
part.
that's critically
That's the good
important,
part.
but we certainly understand where you're coming from,
No,
Mr.
it's a
Booth.
good
But
point.
it's
because the child needs to be able
about
to handle
it's
it.
about
There's a maturity
maturity,
piece.
and
Yeah.
it's about character development, and it's about becoming an adult. And,
It may take boys longer to do that than girls.
Well, but we also know that our highly
and I didn't mean
competitive,
to expand the conversation, and I did just.
our highly competitive colleges and universities are looking for the complete kid. The kid who's been engaged in the arts and sports and activities and leadership opportunities, as well as highly academically performing, so.
I just think there's a lot of value in being a senior in high school and being with your classmates and doing a lot of the extracurricular things that may not be dual enrollment outgoings. It may be a part of a lot of the community engagement that you do when you're in high school. Anyway, I'll shut up.
We agree.
Okay, moving on, Dr. Reinhardt.
Yes, I'm going to move on to the next slide, which just to highlight, I think you saw this most recently, that 5 of our high schools in Osceola County have been named Best High Schools by the U.S. News and World Report 2018 ranking. We're very excited about that. Osceola County School for the Arts is in the gold medal category, and we have 4 schools, Professional Technical High School, Harmony, Celebration, and St. Cloud, that have ranked in that silver category. So that's exciting, obviously, national rankings there.
And it's been unusual for our comprehensive high schools to make it into this ranking. OXA and PASS are there consistently, but we're very excited to see 3 of our comprehensive high
And
schools.
it really does tie back to all of this work we've done with AP and dual enrollment. They're looking at all those factors and many of the things that we're tracking for kids. So it's very exciting. Also, just wanted to point out in our middle schools, you know, we wanted to just keep tracking that data that we've been showing you in terms of acceleration. We're very proud to say that all of our middle schools and all of our K-8s now offer these courses for acceleration face-to-face. And we've progressed to that over the last couple of years, and so you can see more students offering those opportunities, but we want to carefully say that we look to make sure that the students are ready and that that this is the right fit for students. So we want to have access for kids that are ready to be able to manage those courses. So you can see there's been an increase. We had a slight decrease with the biology, but again, we're trying to make sure that we're ensuring success. Another key component to our college and career success on the next slide is our AVID schools. We believe our AVID program really helps to shore up help those students who are academically in the middle to be successful and have access to these programs. We now have 30 AVID schools in the district. Our elementary schools are increasing. We've increased this last year from 9 to 13. And we're very proud to say that Boggy Creek and Pleasant Hill were designated as AVID Showcase schools. And for the first time ever, Narcoossee Middle is an AVID National Demonstration School. Very big deal, one of 14 in the state of Florida to achieve that status. So,
Okay, can you tell us what those 2 things mean, a showcase school and a national demonstration school?
you want to, Dr. Rose?
Sure.
To the showcase?
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
And Mike too.
And like, yeah, for them.
Yes, so in an elementary school, to be a showcase school, it means you have met certain aspects within AVID, certain highlights and benchmarks within that, and then you are able, what that means is that people can come in and look at your school and look at the strategies, how you embed those
So
strategies
AVID kind of
within
looks
your
at them and
school.
says, are you carrying out those practices with fidelity? And then we want other schools to come in and see because you're doing it so well.
And then the National Demonstration School is the highest level of that, so people from across the country will come and observe and try to emulate practices at the front of the school.
Could an elementary school be a national demonstration school? Is that-
Yes.
Okay.
Just have to have a board member serve on your AVID site team,
That
like
helps?
Narcoossee Middle School does.
And to reach that status, AVID comes in, they check not only for the implementation of the strategies with fidelity, but they're also measuring them against academic results.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then the final bullet point there is just to show you how our choice applications have grown over the last 2 years, both the number of applications that we've received, but also the number of students that have been approved and have choice to a different school. So it's been very successful, obviously increases in both areas. And our job fair, our choice fair, I mean, has been packed
And just from the community standpoint, everything I hear about what we do in choice has been positive. I mean, there are single situations here and there where somebody didn't get to go to Harmony Middle School or something like that. But otherwise, everything I hear throughout the community, the district seems to be doing an outstanding job of getting that message out there, and then working with folks even beyond the time that,
Right.
after that. And I think, and so I, as a school board member, appreciate that to everybody who's helped out with all those situations. And I think we're doing a fantastic job there, so appreciate all that.
Thank you for recognizing
I
that, Mr.
had
Booth.
somebody call me a month ago and went on and on thanking me so much for helping their child get their choice. No idea what they were talking about. I got great credit for something you did.
Well, it's your leadership as a board that has helped us implement choice, and it's been so
I didn't know they were
instrumental
trying, I knew the people, but I,
in many, many ways.
I did give you the
So,
credit. So.
Real quick before you move on, I see 1819, the goal is to add Avid in 3 elementary schools and 1 additional high school. Is it our belief as a team that expanding Avid district-wide is the strategy that we should be looking to accomplish?
Hey, Joe, there too.
This is
It
page
really
16.
takes buy-in at the principal level and the teacher level to implement Avid, so I don't know that it's something that I would top-down mandate, but it is something that we will continue to support from the ground up.
Is there another, and you guys know how I feel about Avid, I believe you do, right? Is there another program that is similar to Avid that we should be looking at or talking about that is good or better or no?
Just some districts like the one to the north did away and they tried to do their own, thinking that they could replicate it and they couldn't.
Okay.
And it just didn't have that
I
success.
choose to believe that was the case. That was my opinion, but I asked it to be objective because subjectively I'm all in with Avid. But I wanted to ask the objective question: is there something I just don't know about? So my point here is pretty simple. This, for me, the student population that Avid serves is so incredibly important, and that's why I asked about the expansion of the program. And to be honest, I understand the buy-in, and I understand the buy-in needs to be placed. I'm fully on board with that. However, we can't risk missing or losing those middle-tier students that are so vital. And whatever we need to be doing, whether that's encouraging, promoting, prodding, pushing, dragging, pulling, I don't know, but my personal belief is that this has been one of those tools in the belt that we've needed, and I don't want to look back on my time, our time here, and say we didn't do enough quick enough to make sure that we got to those students who desperately needed just that little bit of extra of guidance and support and direction and strategy. And so I'm glad we're continuing to expand. I know we've talked about it before, but I want us to make sure that we're really looking with our eyes wide open and long down the road to say how much more can we do, and if it's the right thing, then we need to figure out how to make sure we expand it system-wide if that's the case.
Thank you. All right, moving on to 1D, we have Mr. Ott here with us today.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to be Melanie Stefanowicz today. I appreciate that.
Big shoes.
Yes, the big shoes, that's very true. So, as you know, we have quite a bit going on in STEM and CTE throughout the district at both the secondary and post-secondary levels. We're going to share a few highlights today, all, of course, related to expanding opportunities for students. Starting with Project Lead the Way. Project Lead the Way has been expanded to all Title I and Commissioner STEM schools. With the full implementation comes with a full professional development plan to support all the schools. That has created a full comprehensive 3-year progression plan for the middle school programs. A big part of that was the successful implementation of the semi-high-tech U curriculum and partnership with our certified partner status at this time. Under that partnership, a joint training with Bridge just occurred for high school teachers at the secondary level this past week over a 2-day period of time. We have increased our post-secondary program offerings at Osceola Technical College. As you know, we've expanded dual enrollment to all the high schools in the county for all juniors and seniors that are eligible. That translated into about a 500% growth for those students in the past year. We're pleased to let you know that we have over 200 applications for August 2018 from those high schools already, with approximately 250 joining us from PAVS again. We implemented 4 new post-secondary adult vocational Pell eligible programs in 2017 and 18, with plans to open 4 more in 2018-2019. National Academy Foundation Academies. There are 5 high schools engaged in the year planning process, with the first graduation being scheduled for November of 2018. And the expanded opportunities for students to earn industry certifications has come through the added digital tool industry certification opportunities at the middle schools. This will also help to accelerate students to post-secondary certifications once this is attained. And the alignment of high school courses with identified additional opportunities for industry certifications, also what the industry in the local area needs, in established programs of study has helped to create some defined pathways for students not only at the secondary level but then to articulate into the post-secondary pathways.
We won't have our specific data on advanced placement, IB, and industry certification until sometime in July, but we will, as always, update the board as soon as we get that information and do a board presentation in August. I also wanted to share with you some data that we just got in the last week, and I'm not going to pass out these additional papers because you guys have enough paper to work with, but we just received our Perkins performance measures and program improvement plans, and we achieved every single measure. So no improvement plans are needed, from technical skills, completion rates, retention and placement rates, to reading and math attainment, as well as secondary technical skills, secondary school completion, and graduation rate. So really proud of the work that Melanie and Tom and the team have done to get us to a point where we have achieved every measure in terms of the Perkins performance measures.
And that's at both the secondary and post-secondary levels. I believe it's the first time in the past 5 years that both levels have met all goals.
Yes, that we have.
What's the primary barrier to expanding dual enrollment offerings with OTEC?
Right now, it's getting the word out, continuing to do that, continuing to position ourselves in the public perspective in the high schools. And it continues to be, in my opinion, the emphasis on college and career. Where are we pushing that? We are doing a great job in the last 2 years of really making sure the students understand the options, but we're still button up against that public perception of, as you stated earlier, what families feel their students need to do after high school and what the opportunities we can provide are. Opening these new programs are helping to break down that barrier a little bit. The rebrand has helped to break down that barrier a little bit, but we still are battling years and years of that public perception.
Anything else?
That's good. Doing a great job.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. We'll move on with 1E.
So 1E is strengthening collaborative processes. This is the strategy that Dr. Reinhardt, Dr. Respis, and I call the kind of the backbone of all the other strategies of academic success, because as we know, when we maintain collective responsibility for student learning, it certainly yields better results than working in isolation. So new this year, we systematically dedicated time for collaborative teams to meet. All early release Wednesday afternoons and 2 planning periods a month were devoted to for teams to work on professional responsibilities such as collaborative planning and creation of common assessments and development of proficiency scales. And this provided consistency across the district and allowed for increased support from the school as well as district staff. So also, as a result of the natural disasters this year, we recognized the need to focus on welcoming and supporting our new students to Osceola, most of whom, of course, were English language learners. So we emulated an idea that was presented at district-wide training last year by Dr. Lewis Cruz. He's a renowned PLC expert. So every school was responsible for developing an ELL task force. So it comprised of members of faculty and staff at the school who had particular interest and passion in supporting ELL students. So that group was charged with developing methods that would best support and welcome and support the academic needs as well as the social emotional needs of our incoming students. So it's been successful this year, and we plan to continue the ELL task force concept into next year at every school. So also, we, as you well know, we track our data of our collaborative teams utilizing a tool that we call the 7 stages of a PLC rubric That happens 3 times a year, baseline and mid-year and end of year. So each stage in that rubric indicates increased levels of team functionality. So, for example, in stage 3, teams together, they share ideas, they plan, they share resources, which is good, but teams at stage 6 then develop and administer common assessments. They collectively implement interventions for kids based on the results of common assessments, and they accept responsibility of learning for all students, and not just my classroom, my kids. It would be everybody's classroom, and we all are in it together for the best interest. So as you can see, the largest contingency, we made growth through the year up in the stages. Ultimately, we want our teams to be high functioning, which is stages 5, 6, and 7. And as you can see, our largest contingency at the end of the year was at stage 4. So this Thursday, as Dr. Pace mentioned, Mr. Mike Mattos, who's another renowned specialist in the area, he's coming to present to our administrators at the Administrators Academy, as well as our coaches at the Coaching Academy, just on that subject of moving students from that stage 4 up into the stage, or excuse me, teams from stage 4 up into stages 5, 6, and 7.
I would also just share with the board that last Thursday, OCEA and your district bargaining team reached agreement on extending the MOU to effectively use those Wednesday afternoons for our PLC time, because we do continue to believe that it's really, really important that we provide time within the paid day to make those kinds of things that we believe are important happen. So we appreciate being able to reach agreement on that.
The use of PLCs, I know we all believe this, and it's a non-negotiable, but are so valuable. And what they mean in any vertical that we're involved in. It doesn't matter what profession you're in, the opportunity to collaborate with peers and learn and grow, share best practices, and if you will, sharpen the saw with one another is so incredibly valuable. So I appreciate all the work you guys are doing to make sure that happens.
Thank you. So another next step we're looking at for next year is to increase the usage and leveraging Microsoft Teams, which is a digital platform that includes a video conferencing feature. It's already within our Microsoft suite that we own, so teachers throughout the district could better share and collaborate with each other. And finally, our administrators are in the midst right now of master scheduling, and there's a concerted effort taking place to see that our ESE support teachers are included in those planning times that Dr. Pace was referring to, so they can best plan with the gen ed teachers.
There are no other questions, and that brings us to Ms. Bungo and Goal Strategy 1F, which we really were ahead of our time, board members, in terms of going ahead and understanding and recognizing the very important piece of safe and healthy and caring environments and academic success by implementing the strategy last year. It's provided a really strong foundation for the work that we now have to do as a result of the school safety and mental health bill. So, Darla?
Yes, thank you. Good. Hello, everyone. We're developing and sustaining a safe, healthy, and caring environment, which is the title of Goal 1F. There are a lot of trainings that are in your booklet, but we're highlighting some of the trainings that we've done to expand personnel's knowledge of our students that have social, emotional, at-risk factors. The Senate bill that Dr. Pace referred to, 7026, is saying that all students should have access to any social, emotional, mental health counseling. So that's the expansion. But what we've done thus far is we've done some suicide prevention, train the trainers, and some including our bus drivers and food service, on acts on facts, so they know who to go to if there's a situation. Not that they're supposed to be the mental health expert, but who they would lead a student to. Counseling at-risk students, that's ongoing and even expanding more. Accessing mental health services. We do have currently 14 cooperative agreements with the outside agencies that work with students that have severe emotional, social, mental diagnosis, which would come from doctors, beyond what our school counselors, school psychologists, and school social workers can deal with on a school campus. Also with that is the complex medical conditions, what results from some of these diagnoses, and having our team of nurses, which we're fortunate in this district to have. Many districts don't have a nurse at every school, and we do. Also, there's Section 504 plan implementation, and some of that will be health-related or could be, ADHD, anxiety. So those plans, and seeing as we have those plans and counseling, as we can also extract some Medicaid billing that's coming up in the future too. Poverty and social society status awareness. We've just completed the front desk staff at the schools personnel training so that they know with the students and parents that are coming to them what some of their emphases are on and why it might be so, to be a little more tolerant and how to deal with them, how to work with them. And we'll be continuing that for the rest of the staff. Wraparound services, that's where a student's receiving services, and now we're going to include the family, and then the family goes on to figure out what they also need, and then they help other families. That's the wraparound. The whole family, starting with our students, seeing everything that we can do to support them and to help others. And our Student Service Survival Series, that's all the basics of student services. It's the non-curriculum piece, but it's the piece that's important so they can grab all the curriculum that's out there.
I wanted to point out that Survival Series is something that the Student Services team put together. We've been doing it for a couple of years now, and it really was designed to give our deans the professional development, which was really absent.
Sure.
We give them a key, and we give them a radio, and we say you should know all this stuff, and so it's been well received by our deans, and it's pushing them to be better deans. So we're hoping to continue with the Survival Series again this coming school year.
Do you have, there's a lot of stuff here. Do you have the resources to adequately do all this?
Well, actually, we'll be hearing more about that this afternoon
This
at our
evening, yes.
board meeting. Darla and the team will be presenting our mental health plan, which is a requirement of the House Bill,
Senate Bill.
Senate Bill 726. And it has specific funding designated for additional staff to make this work. But one of the key pieces that Darla highlighted on that also I will ask the board to consider embedding into our fiscal responsibility goal for the upcoming school year is we believe we are seriously missing some opportunities to recoup Medicaid funding for a lot of the counseling and social work and psychological services that our staff has already been providing. We know that the private providers bill Medicaid for these things, and we've helped with that. We've done some small billing with our ESE department, but we've identified that there's a lot of missing gaps there that we believe over time may be able to recoup enough Medicaid funding so that even if the mental health funding from the state goes away, because we never know if that's a recurring element or not, we would be able to sustain and support the staff without an impact on the operational budget. So that is one of our suggested recommendations for next steps and strategies in the upcoming school year, is to really invest some time and energy into that process. There's some pretty good software programs out there that we believe would help us. So you'll hear more about that.
Absolutely.
Who was that with? I feel like I just met whoever that.
Excelify?
Excelify
Yes, I
is,
just
yes.
met with them the other day. They were telling me about it.
And we're doing a webinar next week to learn more about that. And the good thing about that is, as they capture funds for us, because it's labor intensive, that's why we're looking for an outside agency, their cut on it is in that money. So it's not costing the district, so to say, any monies. But we'll be bringing in more. And what we've learned, Tom and I were at a training with the Department of Ed 2 weeks ago, that any child with a service plan will be down the road considered for Medicaid. It used to just be an IEP, a special ed student. So that's why we're saying health, psychological services, mental health counseling, and increments of 15 minutes. So 15 adds up. So that's what we're expanding on, and more to come on that.
So we definitely believe that there's some revenue sources out there that will help to support the plan that we'll be presenting to you tonight and asking for approval.
It's a double-edged sword for me, but I understand it. Let me say before you go on any further, well, because ultimately we're all paying for it. It's all
I
taxpayer
understand.
money.
They'll catch on too.
Yeah, we'll all go broke is what'll happen as a government. But let me just say quickly how much I appreciate what you do. You deal with such difficult aspects of what happens in our community and our school district. And your love and your care and attention to what needs to happen to serve this population can't be stated enough. So I just want you to know how much I appreciate what you do.
Thank you. Next section on 1F was reduce student exclusion from the educational environment, keeping kids in school. And we look at one thing being healthcare agreements, 1,400 thus far, where students are, it's nursing care, not a hospital stay or anything like that. Do they need to have medicine for epilepsy or for, diabetes or whatever, so that they can have that and not miss as much school? Of course, that's all physician required, and again, us having nurses, in the schools makes it happen. So more of our students can be healthy and be in our schools. But the other aspect is discipline, and we do know that when we proposed, and Dr. Pace was the lead, that we needed to look at our out-of-school suspensions. The numbers were pretty high. So for this coming year, that's just passing, compared to last year, we're at 12% a reduction in the days of students receiving out-of-school suspension. Tom will tell you more conversations are happening with deans and assistant principals and principals. What are some of the things we can do? But I know there was a concern, school board members and principals, that meant, well, we weren't going to recommend any student for expulsion that really maybe needed to. But if you look, we're just one down, one less than we were last year, which is saying we're really capturing those that have reached that level that they need to be considered. And we have growth too, so even though that's down one, we have got an additional as we grow. So I wanted to let you know that it is valid and true, but we are looking at out-of-school suspensions where they really need to happen.
And thank you. And I know you and I had a conversation about this, and you and I 100% agree on the importance of trying to use this redemptive opportunity for students and keeping them engaged in the school, not kicking them out to where they just get in more trouble or spiral even further academically or socially or behaviorally for that matter, but also then how we're working within school suspension to make sure that there's support and opportunity and even encouragement for these students to kind of course correct. So thank you so much for your leadership on that and for the implementation from your team.
Well, the goal really is not just to punish,
Right.
but to try to change the behavior from a long-term standpoint. But at the same time, we have an obligation to keep our campuses safe, and so we're committed to doing both things.
And that's one of the trainings I went to last week, was a breakout session on exactly that, what's happening in other districts across the state, to where we can continue to work on how do we use discipline opportunities as opportunities to course correct and encourage and shift behavior within students. So, yeah.
Okay, and our partnerships, community agencies, I've mentioned a few of them, so some of this is repetitive, but we do have partnerships, strong partnerships with the Morris Children's Hospital, which is wonderful. It's close by. They also provide free training for our nurses on a monthly basis with their experts in the field. So to get a doctor who has a specialty in trauma or whatever it might be, brain injuries, to speak to our nurses is unheard of. It really does put us on the map. And we also include, when it's appropriate, social workers, school psychologists, if it has something to do with their work as well.
Sure.
So we're so fortunate with that, Nemours Children's Hospital. Vision Quest, you've heard about the students that receive glasses as needed, or just a screening of their eyes. And we try to do that early in the year so that they can, again, capture academics, so they can see whatever it is that they need to learn. And the Orange Blossom Dental as well, keeping our students healthy so that they aren't missing school because they're not feeling right. And I mentioned before, we have 14 agencies providing child welfare and mental health services, and again, that's the intense level. A lot of that's after school, in their homes, or whatever that may be. I mentioned the $3 million grant, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services, SAMHSA, provides the wraparound services for students and families. We're into just finishing our first year of it. We have 2 more years of that. And that's also incorporating the training, so that we have funding to make sure more staff are familiar. And we're finalizing, which we did finalize when I wrote this, we were finalizing the district plan for Senate Bill 7026 that you will hear this evening at the school board meeting, the safe and learning environment, expanding mental health services and safety. So that will be presented. We've worked on that. 2 weeks ago, a group of us went and finished it up. Tom was leading us on that cause, so we were so thrilled to get that ready, have Dr. Pace look at it, and make sure that it was ready for you all. The requirement to the state is August 1st, but we are ahead because of some of the work we've done. While we were there were other counties, and they were just starting at the ground level, so we're very pleased with the support you've given us this year. There are some next steps coming up. We mentioned already, and Dr. Pace mentioned, securing Medicaid funding, looking at that to still also help currently and future students. More to come because the lady in charge, Ann Glass, Department of Medicaid, they still are finalizing some of the services that can be claimed for, and the company. And also with regards to the advanced ed recommendation about mentoring program, we're assembling a multidisciplinary team to align students with a school adult mentor. And that's coming up for this school year.
Thank you.
Anything else on goal 1?
No, thank you.
Thank
for all
you,
the
team.
work you
Great
do.
job.
You guys are doing a
Absolutely.
great
Thank
job,
you.
and we appreciate all the work you do.
You know, that took a little bit longer. Typically, the rest of it goes a little faster. Would you like to take a
Do,
quick break? or do you
I was
wanna
going to
keep
ask, do
plugging
we
in?
want to take about a 5?
5-minute break? Okay, sounds good.
Stand up.
From Montgomery.
All right, thank you, board members, again, for your attention this morning and your engagement in this process of reviewing our strategic plan and some of the things that have been accomplished through the course of this year. That brings us to Goal 2, Talent Management. We have Tammy and her team here to walk through the strategies.
Here I am over here. And I'd like to say thank you again for your continued support on this goal, talent management. It really means a lot to us that our board and our superintendent finds the value in including this as a large part of our strategic plan. I have my goal owners here, and I'd like to say a quick thank you real quick to Dr. Lizette Bresendine. She has headed Goal 2A for since we've started our strategic plan, but she is retiring. So this is her last meeting with us today, and I just want to thank her publicly for all of her work. She's done an awesome job. Thank you. But she's got some pretty good large shoes to fill here, and I've got a new person up on deck, Michelle Henninger, and I'm sure many of you remember her from when she worked as a principal, and now she's come back to work as a senior manager with us. So she is going to take over the Strategy 2A, Building Leadership Capacity. Sonia Butler is going to follow Michelle, and she is going to tell you about the awesome things that we're doing over in HR to get teachers through as fast as possible in front of our kids. And then last but not least is Janice Franceschi, and she is going to talk to you about our great progress and accomplishments in regards to feedback. So without further ado, here's Michelle.
Good morning.
Good morning.
No pressure whatsoever. Leadership development is the focus of this particular strategy, and we've had several accomplishments this year that we'd like to share with you today. There were 7 Stetson University graduates of the master's program in educational leadership in May, and 4 more expected to graduate in July. A new addition to our leadership pipeline this year, the Aspiring Leaders Academy, has produced 46 graduates that have participated throughout the year. Out of those participants, 4 have been appointed to assistant principal roles, as well as a district level coach position. Our current Preparing New Principals program includes 11 graduates this year alone, and out of those, 1 principal appointment. And in moving forward next year, our redesigned Preparing New Principals Academy has recently been approved by the Florida Department of Education to roll out this fall. We're very excited about that. In moving forward for next steps, we will continue to build and strengthen the pipeline and make sure that we're aligned to the district's needs as well as resources.
You're preparing new principals. Are these APs preparing to be principals, or are these teachers trying to be APs?
APs trying to be principals.
Okay.
The Aspiring Leaders Program is designed to target your teachers and coaches who want to be APs.
Would you provide, maybe the whole board, but certainly me, an overview of what the syllabus for that program looks like, or what the programming looks like as you're going through it? I'd like to just see what type of points you're touching on with
For
the
preparing new principals or aspiring leaders, or both?
Do both.
Okay,
Yeah.
will do.
You've got the Stetson teachers getting, these are master's degrees, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do we know, or do we track, I'm sure we do somewhere, I'm sure there's teachers getting masters and PhDs from other places. Do we kind of track that or anything?
We can tell you UCF. We know locally how many are going for leadership. In the current track, there are 5 in the first year track, and there'll be another 4 next year that are either assistant principals, principals, or directors. But other universities like Nova, we don't have that, but we could certainly try to look into that for you.
And are you asking just specifically
No, I
teachers
was really
going for their graduate
I
degrees?
was really thinking more about a recognition for people, teachers as they get master's or advanced degrees. You know, we do a lot of things for kids who've gone on to do things. Is that something we should do for teachers, for our staff?
Well, and that is something we could certainly do, because they have to send their official transcripts in order to get the salary bump. for those kinds of degrees. So if that's something that the board would like
Yeah,
to start
no,
acknowledging.
I think that's a great idea.
You know, I don't know that I had a chance to share with you, but we've gotten several positive comments back from our students who've been accepted into military service after graduation based on the letters that you guys have provided. And certainly an acknowledgement from the board of a
Absolutely.
teacher's master's degree and adventure into leadership could be something we definitely look at.
And,
Okay.
and there is one thing that you need to know about a graduate degree in regards to the state of Florida with Senate Bill 736. They can get their master's degree or specialist or doctorate, but if they do not have a match on their teaching certificate with their subject area and their degree area, the state will not allow us to recognize that for a salary. So I just want to make sure that you're aware.
Tell me specifically what that means.
You gotta have a master's in math.
Right.
If you're a math
Like
teacher.
we have people that are going for their degree in curriculum and instruction, a master's. And we cannot recognize that salary-wise because it is not a match on their certificate.
So, let me ask you this, Tammy. I think, I believe it was when I was at the University of Florida, the University of Florida was almost forcing all their teachers to take that 1 year extra deal and have their masters that raise their salary. Is that something that you can't do anymore, or you
If
can't
it's
recognize
in your
that?
area of certification, and the problem is that, and it's statewide, so if you leave and come back, you're grandfathered July 1st, 2011. So if you had it then and you work for us, you could keep the money. But if you leave and go to Orange County and then maybe come back in about 3 years, we cannot recognize that degree again.
So where was the biggest hit on that? So,
I think it was curriculum and instruction.
Curriculum and instruction, any general education
like a general
studies.
education,
Right.
that doesn't count?
It's not subject specific. Like,
Even for elementary ed,
if they have a master's degree in elementary ed and they have elementary
but
on their
not a
certificate,
general
we're good.
curriculum?
Right. If it was general education degree.
Education leadership.
So that doesn't, you don't get paid for that?
You do, because you can apply that to your certificate. And you can have a master's degree, for example, my master's degree is in English education. I'm not currently teaching English, but I could be paid for that master's degree as long as I kept English current on my certificate. So we really just encourage folks to go for either the subject-specific master's degree, or if they ever have any aspirations of being a leader, to go towards an educational leadership degree. Because then as long as you pass the FELE and apply to add it to your certificate, we can pay you for the master's degree, whether you're currently serving in a leadership role or not.
How widespread is that issue amongst our employees that they do get their masters, they think that it's going to work and create an opportunity for a bump, and now it's not going to? Is that something that's widespread, or is it anecdotal?
It's generally new people coming in that we see that. We've tried to educate our current employees on what the law is, and so I really haven't seen that lately for current employees, veteran employees, but people coming from other states, particularly North Carolina, where it's all more of a general curriculum instruction degree.
It is a recruitment issue, because some of them
Yeah.
expect to get,
The master's pay. and
Right.
you know,
Right, and Florida is the only state that I'm aware of that has such a law. So no one is
Yeah,
used to
another-
that. And
Another law
smarter
to
than
shoot us in the
everybody.
foot when
Yeah.
it comes to recruiting
Yeah.
teachers.
I do think, to your point, though, making sure that the staff is aware of that, that challenge that exists there. I'd hate for somebody to go do it, not know, not be
Yeah.
aware. I can't
Right.
imagine, maybe
Making
they
sure we
would,
communicate
but,
that.
yeah, make sure they know in advance so that they're not disappointed at the end after putting in all that time and work and money.
And I think we've got the word out because I haven't heard of anybody in a long time, but we'll be more than happy to send it out
No,
again.
that's fine. If you're
Make
doing a
sure
good
people
job.
know, yeah.
And we use that as a retention tool for the people
Right.
grandfathered in.
Yeah.
If you go to Orange
Yeah.
County, you're going to
That.
lose.
Right.
Yes.
And you lose your PSC and stuff
What
like
is
that,
that
so that helps
differential?
us. A master's degree, the additional salary is $26.85, so $2,685.
Okay, so moving on to recruitment, Ms. Butler?
And our strategy focuses on strengthening the recruitment, hiring, and retention process. As far as our recruitment efforts, the district staff has participated in 25 national, state, and local spring events alone. And we had a pop-up job fair last week, which was very successful, and we have another one scheduled for July. We are in discussions with company called Educational Partners International, and their focus is on placing international teachers through a J-1 visa. So we're continuing our talks with them in order to fill some of these vacancies that we have. We've expanded our contract with LinkedIn to include the development of talent pipelines, a new program that they are offering. And the number of candidates that have accepted positions by this time of year compared to last year has doubled. And as of this morning, the latest number of applicants, candidates accepting positions as a teacher is 285.
How short are you still for?
I would say probably a few hundred positions.
Probably
Yeah.
about 300 positions.
Does that increase equate to a decrease in open positions at this point?
Yes.
In raw
As of
numbers?
yesterday, we had
Yes.
like 350. It was crazy. We are, but we've really emphasized early hiring practices in order to try to get a jump on the high-quality candidates early.
So you alluded to the teacher from North Carolina that thinks the master's is going to pay and it doesn't. So along with that, what are, I guess, some of maybe the top 3, top 5 things that you get close with somebody and then they say, oh wait, you know, are there those 2 or 3, 4 or 5 things?
Salary,
Yeah,
housing.
salary. Yeah, salary and housing.
housing,
And our salary issue.
master's degree
Yeah.
issues?
I don't think the master's is
Okay.
yeah, it's basically salary and housing. I mean, we just had an article that we got yesterday about housing, and Greg White just shared with me, we will give teachers a letter that says your anticipated salary is going to be this amount. Well, you know, typically we'll just give them the starting salary, $40,100, and they went off and been able to secure an apartment. But now they're coming back and saying, you need to estimate my experience because I need the letter to say at least $44,000 in order to secure a 2-bedroom apartment. So that is a huge hurdle that we're finding. And then also the salary, the way our schedule froze when performance pay went into effect.
Mm-hmm.
Teachers with experience coming in, it doesn't pay for them to come to our district.
So those, I guess you just kind of said 3 big ones.
Yeah.
A salary, housing, and then the experience pay. So if you've got 20 years in some other state, you're still at, you
Well-
come in here, you're not going to be at 41.
Well, no, and what we do with our salary schedule, because we want to make sure that our current veteran teachers, that our new teachers aren't leapfrogging them
Yeah,
and
no,
coming
absolutely.
in. So we do a crosswalk where we look at our experienced teachers and figure out this person at 20 years of experience is making this, so then I have someone coming in at 20 years, they'll make that. I don't have that specific number
That's
right
okay.
off the top of my head, but that's when I've been talking to teachers, and it's usually within like the 10-year range, when if they have 10 years of experience and looking at what they have elsewhere, it's usually a few $1,000s difference.
Do you guys have, go ahead.
No.
Do you have a matrix of overall cost of living compared to other markets that we're primarily competing against? There is a difference in living in Florida and living in North Carolina. We have a state
Right,
income tax.
yes.
And there's a lot of variables. And yes, housing is and is going to continue to be an impediment for a lot of people because prices have been going up since 2011. But when you look across the board at the overall cost of living, I transplanted here from New York, and everybody would say, oh, well, compared to salaries in New York, yeah, great, try living in New York.
Right.
Try paying your property
Yeah,
taxes. I mean,
yeah.
or state taxes, or any other tax for that matter, sales tax. So do we have those matrix that we can kind of walk through cost of living and overall expenses moving to Central Florida as opposed to living somewhere else?
I know we do talk about it, because I know I'll talk to people, and I was like,
Something
we
we
don't
can
have a
research.
state income tax, and our cost of living is lower here in Osceola County even compared to other Central Florida, but we don't have like a specific matrix where we can say, okay, this is this and this is that.
We can get that probably from the Orlando Economic Partnership, and you probably should get that, because that
Yeah.
data is out there. We don't need to create it, it
That's a great
exists.
point, too.
And,
And people just, and look, salaries and housing are real considerations that we're always thinking about and talking about, but there are so many variables that go into what it actually costs to live somewhere. And I deal with this every day of my life, as you know. And if somebody says, well, I'm not going to buy here, because a house is, median home price is $220,000. Instead, I'm going to go there where it's $195,000, and I'm making those numbers up, but they don't take into account all those other costs and factors that are embedded in living in Georgia, which also has a tax. I mean, so you have to be able to weigh all that out, and unfortunately, a lot of people don't understand the layers that ultimately are going to cost them money in the long run. So I think you're a good point of where to get it.
And I can
Definitely.
help you with that connection
Yeah,
if you
that
want.
would
I
be
can get you some names, or I can make the initial contact.
Or I can follow up. Yeah, I'm on the group, so.
And I just wanted to go back to vacancies real quickly. Sonia, we had almost, just shy of 200 that had certification non-renewals.
Right.
And I know we've talked about this, a couple
Say it again.
certification non-renewals. So we had about 200 teachers who were non-renewed due to some type of certification
Not passing
issue.
tests, finishing courses.
So, I mean, I bring that
Are
up
they
is because
purely
it
out, or they
continues
have
to
time
be.
still?
That we're bringing them back as they finish, basically, yeah. Yeah, they're still working on it. We've had a few that have eventually passed the general knowledge and have been rehired, as well as people teaching out of field who have finished up their reading courses that were required by law, and now they can come back. So, but it's still probably still about at 175.
I mean, it's still a very significant number, and and we've talked about proposing some relief, from the legislators to give us a little bit more time for teachers who are coming in to earn their certification requirements.
Do they need time, or are they just not doing what they need to be doing?
There's a little bit of both. Some are
I'm
not
opposed
doing
to
it.
If y'all convince me they really need the time.
Still needed 1 year, right?
The one-year piece is really what we had pursued with the board in the past as a legislative issue, was because they have a 3-year temporary certificate, but they're required to pass a general knowledge test within that first year. And, some people do put it off, and for those folks, I don't have a tremendous amount of sympathy. But, for others, to have that additional time, we believe would be a reasonable and valuable request. I will tell you that it was not something that the commissioner supported at all.
And if you really think about what a new teacher goes through their first year of work, it's tremendous, and it's a lot of pressure. So, we're not asking to excuse the test totally, but just to give them that 3-year period that their licensure is good for. And if they don't have it by the end of that 3 years, adios, you didn't keep your end of the deal. And I would totally support go on down the road, but there's just so much that our new teachers face in their first year, and especially the alt certification people that aren't even teacher trained to start with, and they go into a classroom, and it's tremendous. It's a lot of work for these people.
In raw number and by way of percentage, what's the difference this year compared to last year, the year before, with the number that aren't able to be renewed because of that?
I think we ended up around 70-ish last year, if I
I
remember
thought
right.
it was like 68.
And now
right around
200.
70, correct.
175 we're down to.
Do we,
Double.
Significant.
does your department provide, I don't know, quarterly updates or something on, hey, you've been here now 6 months, do we have? Okay, I presume you did.
Yeah. Oh,
We
yeah.
send them memos and require them to sign it, and talk to their principal about their requirements, and
Okay.
and now
So
with the mentors
So they
that
shouldn't
we're
get
adding
within a
will
month
help.
and realize they haven't done
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah, we're going to be working closely with the
Okay, that's
mentors.
fine.
Yeah,
So
and
number
we've
one
also
barrier is
provided.
capacity then? I mean, it's just that they just aren't capable of passing it. That's it. It's not a matter, for the most part, they're aware. I mean,
They're aware.
they're communicated with, they have the time, I mean, in theory, right? It's really just comes down to just not capable. Is that?
Yeah, and they get
Which is
hung up,
fair, it's
and
not a
it's not
criticism.
always the same section of the test that they're getting hung up on. It depends on, if there's a language issue, sometimes it's the essay section that they're having a problem with. More and more we see the math section, but that's one area that, as a part of our retention efforts, we've been providing some assistance through professional development. So
Are a
we
lot of
did.
people taking advantage of that?
We had 25 this spring session overall throughout the school year. I think we had 3 sessions, right, Janice? And there were 68 participants.
Is it a test you need to study for, or is it stuff you should?
The math portion, yes.
Is it?
Yeah. math portion. They've actually, you know, you guys know this, they've changed the requirements. The math is a little more rigorous than it used to be, and,
Sure.
and people leave school and they need refreshers on to pass it.
Right.
I mean, I think about my own college experience. I had one math class, I think, you know, my first year, calculus, and for 3.5 years later, I didn't have math. And I would say that many of our teachers are in that same kind of a situation. So even as a pretty decent math student in high school, when you don't do math, it's a skill that you lose if you're not practicing on a regular basis. And it goes beyond balancing your checkbook to Algebra 2 level math, which we want all of our folks to know how to do,
Sure.
but it has been a long time since we've done it. And so, you know, that I think is kind of what gets people hung up. So we continue to offer the courses to support it, but it is, you know, it continues to be a challenge, and this is not just an Osceola County problem. And every time they have to retake the section, the cost goes up for them. So
total number of openings last year in June versus this year in June.
I can answer that one. About 190
Last
just
year?
this week last year, and it's about 390.
This year?
390.
Yes.
So even though we've hired
That
more.
includes all instructional vacancies, including guidance and all of
I
those.
think it was about 350 when we backed out supplemental.
And
Yeah.
this, and I'm assuming that this is not an Osceola specific problem.
it's all over the state.
It's all over the state.
It's all over the country.
And 100 of those are attributed to exactly what we just talked about, correct?
Yes.
Because
175.
Well,
175.
yeah, but I'm saying comparatively, last year to this year, we had 65 roughly
Yeah.
that were non-renewed because of that. So there's
An
about
extra
100 delta. And then part of that is also tied to the growth, new schools, new
Yes.
expansion, all that. Okay.
Correct.
And then.
Is that,
Oh, no, you're gonna finish it. I was just gonna say, so we were at 190 this June. What did we end up at on the day the school started? And so,
I wanna say I was around
60 or 70 short?
I was thinking it was that number 68 kept coming up too.
so roughly 70. So how do we get from 390 to 70?
A lot of job fairs, a lot of recruitment efforts. I mean,
And I've got to give our principals credit. They have been out there hitting it, and they are hiring and interviewing. I was on the phone with Waggy Creek last night at 6 o'clock, and she had her secretary calling people to get them in for interviews. I mean, they are turning over every rock, anything that they can find.
This is
So-
forcing us to settle on talent we
Well,
would like to not settle on.
Where I was headed.
Not yet.
how many, let's go back to the real estate question. How many interview are offered a position and then ultimately don't solely because they can't find a house or adequate housing?
There's probably just a handful.
Yeah.
I think there might have been 2 last summer. I don't remember that coming up yet this year.
It's super tight right now,
Oh,
is why I bring
yeah.
it up. I mean, the market is so tight right now to find something is difficult. Inventory's low, rentals are almost non-existent. I mean, there's
Yeah.
not a lot of options in the marketplace.
Probably next month we'll really feel that because they're just starting to move down, just starting to look.
Anything else? Otherwise, we'll move on to 2C.
Yeah, I had one other
Oh, yeah.
question, which was, how does our number look this year, number of people leaving the Osceola district and going to another district and compared to previous years? Are we seeing more people leaving and going to surrounding districts or moving back home, wherever home is for them? Or is it pretty much by way of percentage on par with what we typically see?
I know the people that I've spoke to, they're leaving to go back to South Carolina or do things, closer to their family, but I don't think we'll really have a true number until right before school starts because people are still holding out on letting us know that they're leaving because they want to make sure they have everything tied down where they're at.
We typically compare our
So-
turnover number at September and
Yeah.
September because that's when the dust is kind of
Yeah.
settled and how many new people you've had to hire, how many people have left.
What's the total number? I know, seeing these numbers and they grow every year because I know we were 3,500 instructional, that was maybe a couple years ago. What is it? What is it like?
Right
How
around
many?
4,000,
It's
yeah.
right around 4, so it's 10%. I mean, we're 10%.
Keep in mind that we had the significant growth in
No,
population
I
during the
understand.
school year and weren't
Yep.
able to fill some of those positions, so that is added to the vacancy list now.
Sure. Yeah. That's a good conversation, guys. Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you.
I appreciate it. Janice?
Okay, so 2C, creating a culture of feedback for professional growth. So I just want to share with you some highlights. During the advanced ed accreditation visit that took place in January, our district received recognition for having a culture of feedback as a as a powerful practice. We had 2 professional learning opportunities that were specifically cited in the final review. One was the administrator's instructional rounds, and the other one was the Cambridge effective feedback. Both of these opportunities engaged administrators and instructional leaders in learning effective feedback protocols and practicing the feedback themselves. Another opportunity is coming up with the TSL grant, the Teacher and School Leader Federal Grant that we received last fall. As part of this grant, we have gone into contract with a new teacher center that is going to assist us in building a strong mentoring program for these novice educators that we are currently hiring, and also to provide professional learning opportunities in feedback for instructional mentors. In May, we had Jennifer Abrams, a national consultant on feedback and communication, that delivered the presentation Generational Savvy to administrators and instructional coaches. The presentation highlighted generational differences to strengthen workplace communication and culture. And lastly, I wanted to share with you, we talked earlier about coaches, instructional coaches, and their value. And this week, as Dr. Pace mentioned, the Facilitative Coaching Academy is taking place for our instructional coaches. The focus on this year's academy is going to be on Jim Knight's Impact Coaching Cycle, which is a structured coaching approach to foster improvements in teaching. One of the things that this process does is it helps them to analyze the current reality in the classroom, helps the teachers set goals, learn teaching strategies to meet those goals, and provide support to the teachers until they meet the goals. So I wanted to just kind of add that in there, knowing that you had questions about the coaching earlier.
Any questions, board members?
I have one just back on the other earlier subject. The generational savvy is what made me think of it. The teachers that we're primarily hiring are all young hires, right? By way of average age, is that?
We can look into that, but I can tell you, like last year, we hired a gentleman that he was, I think he was like 70-something years old, and he had just got his degree not too long ago and was teaching elementary out at, I think it was either PAFA out in the Poinciana area or COA. So, they're not all.
Yeah, I met him.
Yeah.
Loved
But in
him.
terms
I
of years
know.
of experience,
Yeah.
Sonia,
Well, I
most
know-
of them have
Yeah.
limited experience
Well,
or
let me-
lots of
let me
experience.
qualify
We don't
why
know
that-
for
I think
age.
he's
I understand.
doing
Let me qualify
generational-
what I'm getting at.
Right.
What I'm getting at is, as we think about people in any this is
Yeah.
not a teaching question. This is a generational thing, and there's no slight in that statement, by the way. Simon Sinek has a great commentary that he put out on what we need to understand in all verticals when we talk about hiring practices and what's happening right now particularly with millennials and coming into a workforce and then cycling back out of a workforce, and the reasons why and what the drivers behind that really are. So when I saw that, it kind of brought to my mind, because we deal with this in another number of areas, including in the companies that I'm a part of. We need to keep that in mind, and we need to be mindful that there are some very unique differences with each one of us generationally. I mean, we all in this room come from different generations, and we all have different experiences that we were raised with that shape what our expectations are, what our longevity is, what our commitment to a job, an employer, a profession, or a craft, or a trade may be. And those are all very important things for us to be mindful of. I'm not talking about whether or not we do or don't hire based on age, of course, but what I'm saying is we need to be aware of, as we're expanding that workforce, we need to understand what those generational differences are and how to make sure that we're communicating properly to those employees, and also understanding what it is that they're looking to get out of their teaching career. You guys know all this. I'm going to preach to the choir, but there are so many people that are testing professions, and that is their MO right now is, well, I'm going to be a teacher for 3 or 4 years and see how it feels. Oh, that's not really what I want to do, so I'm going to go into real estate for 3 years. No, I didn't like that. Or I want to go into the Peace Corps because I feel like I'm going to do a lot of good work. And we need to understand that that is a reality of our society right now, and as we talk about this being the largest employer in the community, we need to understand that and make sure we're thinking ahead on how we're dealing with those variables. Otherwise, the problem's only going to get more and more for us in the next few years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Just
That's what
very,
Jennifer
very
Abram
quickly,
messaged.
roughly, percentage of college graduate first-year teachers versus just all other on new hires.
On new hires, okay, college.
Just I'm a
fresh out of
first-year
college.
teacher, fresh out of college,
Right.
and then all others. Like, I'm just kind of putting them in two
Turn
categories.
to Greg for a number off the top of your head. I think it's probably been pretty even.
It's about half
Because
and
we've
half.
hired a lot of career changers too.
No?
There's like 5 that are fresh out of college in the first 85.
Wow. Really? Now, see, that's an amazingly low number. I mean, I'm
Well, and
shocked
the
by
thing-
that number.
But the thing is, that's where we're going because the colleges aren't producing
No,
the
I
teachers
get it.
anymore.
I didn't know it was that low,
Yeah.
is what I'm saying.
And to Tammy's point, I mean, the thing that's important to think about, we're talking about folks who might be graduated from college, fresh out, but they didn't go to college to be a teacher. It's like they got a degree in English or a degree in history, and then they graduated or got ready to graduate.
If you don't mind, and in no rush, if you could break down those numbers and send it to us, I'd like to see, and I'd like to know fresh out of college teaching degree, fresh out of college non-teaching degree, and then kind of all others. And if you want to break them down in whatever categories you haven't broke down, that's fine.
Okay.
Because that is extremely interesting to know that in teaching now, we're hiring 2 out of 80 that have a teaching degree.
And Mackenzie is monitoring this data very carefully. Obviously, she's only had a chance to look at the first 85 because of our
That's fine.
TSL grant and the mentoring piece. But we definitely can
No
gather
no
that data,
rush,
so
no
thank you.
rush. Get your important work done.
You know, my daughter
It's her
is an
Get
example of
380
that.
teachers hired
Yeah,
first.
yeah, do that
Yeah,
first.
do that
then.
first. My daughter's an example. I don't think I've told you yet that Courtney's going to be a teacher in North Carolina now, and her degree is in business. Her practice is actually in implanting pacemakers and heart defibrillators, so she ended up going into the medical track even though she went to school for business. And just this last 2 months she decided, I've always told her she was going to be a teacher, by the way. She's finally listening to Dad. But she, within the last 2 months, said, you know what, Dad, I'm going teaching profession, and here's why, and kind of mapped out her purposes. So I think you're seeing more and more of that. A student like Courtney who has always had the gifting and the calling to do the type of work that our staff does every single day, but pursued other paths, and is now at 30 years old, 29 years old, saying, okay, I want to go in this direction because I know that's going to fulfill something that's really important to me as a human being. So, yeah.
To illustrate the point on shortage of teachers, UCF graduated in the spring 1,000 educators. We needed 500. Orange County needed 700-800. Seminole County needed 400. And so that's our local university to pump out.
Yep.
So we're working with them actually right now to set up an orientation, for example, for our paras. We have a lot of paras that have college degrees. And so one of the things we're working on is bringing together a group of our paras to see if they'd be interested in either furthering their degrees with UCF or would they be interested in a teaching profession. So we're having to be very creative to look for teachers because there's just not enough of them being produced that are highly qualified right out of the gate.
Well, and the narrative around education has to change. If the conversation is always that teaching is so terrible and so difficult and all of these other things, that the narrative is becoming more and more, whether we like it or we don't, or whether it's an unintended outcome or not, that changes the desire and the willingness for people to enter a profession that we know is such an important part of what happens in the community. So if all of us as stakeholders in the space don't change the narrative of how we discuss the importance of the work that happens and the benefits that come from it, what you have is people who maybe as a young person said, I want to be a teacher, but then heard people complaining about being a teacher or whatever the case might be, or rhetoric surrounding all the political discussion that's become so loud, they go, well, I thought I always wanted to do this, but man, everyone makes it sound miserable. I don't want to be a part of it. They go another direction, and then we have these situations where now they've matured a little bit more and they go, wait, maybe I should have really pursued, my heart and passion really was. But
Maybe everything on Facebook is not true.
I can guarantee that.
All right, talent management team, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good job, guys. Thank
Goal
you.
3? We really appreciate the engagement and the discussion, board members, and it gives us good direction as we start to think about next steps. But these goals typically move a little bit faster.
I've got one more comment on what
Absolutely.
Tim was just making. I think we have a real problem, not just in Osceola County, but everywhere, of not valuing teachers as a profession. And I think as part of our recruitment retention team, I think they need to be thinking about things that we can do from a district standpoint to deliver that message. The teachers are professional, they are valuable, they're valuable parts of our community, and things we can do to drive the standing of the profession up as opposed to ignoring it.
And you know, that was the original board intent of Goal 4
we've
for
talked
community
about that.
engagement, and so I think we just need to continue to look for additional ways and strategies to do that. Yeah. All right, Sarah and our fiscal responsibility team.
Good morning.
These are all the money spenders.
Got quite a team
It's a
here.
very expensive table all of a sudden.
Expensive things.
Well, as you all know,
Actually, that was the most expensive right there. Look at it.
yeah, teachers. That is our largest expense. So. As you all know, we have our 3 strategies under Goal 3, fiscal responsibility. And while 3C is designed to bring in additional revenue, obviously our main focus for our day-to-day work is on 3A and 3B, is really stretching the dollars that we do have and maximizing the efficiency of the funding that we do have available. So I'm going to turn it over to Jose Gonzalez, and he'll walk us through 3A, and the team has a lot of great details for you.
Good morning. So in terms of our operating costs, becoming a choice school district had a significant impact on how we staffed our schools. By changing our instructional staffing models to meet class size at the school-wide average rather than class by class, we were able to allocate 75 positions less than we otherwise would have to support our growth. So that was $4.8 million in savings. Those dollars went right back into the budget to provide salary increases for our teachers and support staff and to balance the overall budget. We also looked at our software and applications, and we eliminated redundant and underutilized software. The $500,000 savings from that initiative was also reinvested to purchase new digital tools, including Naviance, Elevate, and 10Marks. As we continue our work to manage our healthcare costs, our Center for Employee Health is still a valuable resource and a benefit to our employees. Since we've opened it, over 7,100 patients have visited the center. Right now, that's 79% of our total employees and dependents on our health care plans.
7,100 unique.
Correct.
Wow, that's really big.
And then as of April 30th, out-of-pocket savings to employees is over $1.5 million. Since we've implemented the financial penalty for no-shows, we were able to reduce our no-shows at the center by over 50%. As you know, the long-term goal with the center is to reduce our claims costs, but as we have a healthier workforce, we should see a reduction in absenteeism, which should result in reduced substitute costs as well. Looking forward into next year, Ms. Bungo talked about the Medicaid funding. We're looking at opportunities to maximize our Medicaid reimbursements where we can. We're also looking at developing a district-wide calendar that would include all of our district events, trainings, and meetings, so all of that information in one place. We're still working towards the 3-tiered bell schedule for the 2019-2020 school year. So the transportation team is developing stakeholder groups to study the impact of the change in the school start times as we move forward to get some feedback from the community. And then the last thing is we're also looking at the feasibility of the one-to-one. So Mr. Curran has some additional information regarding that.
Currently, we're at about 2-to-1 in most schools. Using next year's digital classroom plan, we'll equalize it so that all schools will be at least 2-to-1 or less. So that's the plan on the 2-to-1. If we went to 1-to-1 using the current costs that we have today, over a 5-year period, it would cost us between 40 to 49 million to implement it. Part of that you'd have to have another instructional technology coach at each school so that they could instruct the teachers on how to infuse technology into their lessons. And we'd need another computer tech at all schools that don't have more than one, which currently now it's only the high schools
That have more than one.
that have more than one. And both of those positions would be 10-month. Now, granted, that's on the cost we pay now. If you were to go down such a road, I'm sure that the procurement, we could get better prices than what we have today. But that's a general ballpark if we did it today.
That's to get it.
To 1-to-1?
So what's it gonna cost us to stay at 2-to-1?
At 2-to-1, it's going to cost us $242,000. Then we're going to take out the digital classroom plan.
No, but I mean over the next few years to maintain, because you gotta refresh, you gotta assume you're refreshing a portion of those every year, right?
We intend to take the rest of what's left in the DCP minus the training funds and add that to our $1 million that you give us every year to refresh. So we'll start to slowly bring it down. But you know, right now we're at about a 3 million refresh rate with the millions of the years are pretty high.
And the million that he's referring to is we're allocating $1 million of capital funds annually to student computers.
So that should put us at about $1.5 million.
Okay. Questions?
Yeah, something's not making sense to me. The $49 million to get to the 1-to-1, that would be doing it all at once, or that's over five, how many years?
That'd be over 5 years.
So does that $49 million, is that just the additionals, or is that your refresh number as part of that?
No, the refresh would be separate because we'd be going 1-to-1 with the students. You still have to keep the labs in some of the schools for testing. If the kid's got the laptop, you can't just take it away and say, well, you can't have it for 2 months while you test. Now, at some point, the refresh would go down if you had a 1-on-1 because you wouldn't need as many devices in schools. Does that make any sense?
Well, I guess where I'm going is $49 million over 5 years, $10 million a year to buy 50% of our computers. But if we have 50% of them that have to be refreshed, why isn't that also going to cost us?
Well, it would.
I mean, if we got 35,000 computers now, that's I guess roughly what we got.
Right.
We've got to refresh. To buy another 35,000 is $10 million a year. How come it's not $10 million a year to refresh? If you follow what?
Right,
The
but
numbers
part of
aren't making sense.
Part of the challenge is that to really go to a 1-to-1 where Jose's going to take his laptop home every night, we still have to have a bank of computers in the classrooms for lab purposes, for CTE purposes, for testing purposes, for general use within the classroom. What happens if Jose forgets his or breaks or those types of things? So you end up buying more than just $35,000 more today to get us to a technical 1-to-1 in order to send them home with Jose and Sarah.
So a 1-to-1 means we have a 1 1/4?
Probably,
Yeah.
yep, about
Plus
1
the
1/4.
additional staff to really implement.
And then two, there's this, what Robert has said, based on other experiences and an analysis done for Orange County's 1-to-1 and other districts, it really takes technology support at the school. If you remember, one of our areas for improvement identified in advanced ed was the use of technology in the classroom. We have the tools, but teachers weren't fully implementing student use of the tools for learning purposes. And so that's something that we've embedded into all of our professional development this summer. But just to give the kid another computer isn't going to make it academically successful or effective. So you would need the tech coach to talk to teachers about how to implement this and how to make it work, as well as the tech itself to keep track of, Jose's isn't working today and it needs to be fixed. Sorry, Jose. Mark's isn't working today and it needs to be fixed.
There's
So
a
it's just the closest one
whole
to me.
expense with district support too on that for the teaching and learning side. In Orange County, to keep that rolling, I had a staff of 40 just for making sure that the implementation of the curriculum was in there, because there's a whole learning curve and additional department that had to make that work.
So the 2-to-1 we have right now, are any of those used by classrooms, sets that people take home and stuff?
No, they don't take them home, but they're rolled up. You know, some are fixed labs.
Sure.
Some of them are on carts, and they're rolled from classroom to classroom as need be.
So, you know, I believe in the 1-to-1, but show me on here which one of these districts are 1-to-1 and which ones aren't, and I bet it's a scattering through all of them, and is it really pushing the data up? It's not pushing the numbers.
The high schools are at the 1-to-1 in Orange County, and we beat them in grad rate, and we were 1 point behind them in Excel.
Exactly.
So, you know, our last year's scores were, we had better score grades overall. You know, typically with 1-to-1, your first year, when you roll it out, you take a dip anyway, because there's a little bit of learning curve to use it. But longevity-wise, that's the only district on there that's 1-to-1.
Is that the comparing an apple and an orange in fairness? The size and scale of the district compared to ours?
Same measurements on the Florida School Report. I mean, we're still going up against the same, we're being measured the same way.
I understand that, but I guess my point is, are we looking, it's in the weeds, it's not relevant right now, but aligning high school to high school, Osceola to Orange, as opposed to taking the aggregate of all in the two districts. And I could be wrong, but I have to imagine that there's some variables in there that could skew that. And I'd be really interested in seeing it lined up, like, okay, these 9 high schools in Osceola compared to these 9 high schools in Orange that align in so many ways. How then is the data aligned? So,
and look, I would love to be 1-to-1, but I mean, and I've been looking at this the last few years, and it's not driving the numbers up. And then I think that Mr. Weishauer is correct. You know, there's probably is a few apples and a few oranges in there. I get it, but thank you.
Mr. Clinch?
So on the maximizing capital use of capital funding, a couple of highlights. First, the sales tax program. In the short time that the sales tax program was approved by the voters of Osceola County, the school district has completed nearly $10 million in deferred maintenance. That's 33 projects. Additionally, 7.5 million projects are planned for the upcoming year. That's 36 projects. And plans are in place to complete 24 of those projects over the summer. Next steps will be to identify our projects 5 to 6 years out. Develop maintenance benchmarks to measure effectiveness of operations. We have reduced our deferred maintenance items on the facility condition assessment by 14%. That's 100 million unfunded down to 86 million. And the maintenance department has completed the Governor's Sterling Explorer program, which will be recognized at tonight's board meeting. And they continue the journey with the Sterling Challenger program by recently attending that conference. So the next steps will be to identify the steps that we need to put in place to ensure our success on this next phase of that program. And also, another highlight is our energy savings. We are nearing zeroing in on finalizing our energy guidelines. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Shatera to talk about alternative funding sources.
So with alternative funding, you know, you all have worked with lobbyists to pass language allowing us the use of those local sales tax dollars. So that was great for us. We also, through credit card usage, as far as paying out bills, we have exceeded $325,000 for the calendar year 2017, and we'd look to have a 50% increase in that in the first quarter of 2018. And we spoke about the energy savings. I'm also presently in the process of calculating if there's been any savings from creating the white fleet procedure.
Well, are we anywhere on our, you know, I know we've talked about federal grant funding and having a stronger focus on that. Where are we at on that?
Well, we were awarded the TSL grant, which was
Correct,
our
yep.
significant federal grant in recent years, and Leslie is currently working on hiring 2 grant writers, right? To help support further initiatives in
So I mean, that
particular.
process is moving along.
Yep, moving along.
We also put in an accountability measure that I think is worthwhile moving forward, that all grant managers will meet with Leslie and I every quarter to make sure that all those, everything we're doing in the grant aligns to the strategic plan, and so that we're really pushing that along, making sure we're staying on pace. So that'll happen 3 times a year.
Thank you.
All right, anything else for goal 3? Okay, then we'll bring up Dr. Straker and
Stop
Ms.
breaking
Schaefer
your
for 4 and
computer,
5. We typically work through goals 4 and 5 together. If that's okay, we'll have Dana and Peter come on. Ms. Schaefer, go ahead.
Good morning. I'm very pleased to say that we're making great strides in goals 4 and 5, and this is certainly due to the leadership of this board and superintendent, as well as outstanding community support. We're communicating clearly, transparently, and consistently, and that is definitely essential as we build understanding and support for our schools and the district. So some highlights in goals 4 include the following. The district saw an increase of 17,000 donated volunteer hours this year through the OASIS program. In 2016-17, we had 313,000 documented hours, and for 17-18, we had 330,000 documented volunteer hours. As we continue to grow our social media, over 200 teachers have been trained on the use of social media, and that was certainly the board's direction to us to get it down to the classroom level, and those trainings will continue as we move forward. Analytics have continued to show tremendous growth in the followers and impressions reached through our social media sites managed by the district. From April 2017 to April 2018, we increased 98.15% in our likes, fans, and followers on the district and superintendent social media pages. And from May 2017 to May 2018, we increased 202.82% in our reach and impressions on the sites as well. The district's second Osceola Scholars event for graduating seniors, and remember this is the event that we recognize our students who have received admission to a top 100 college or university, military academy, or a musical conservatory, and the students who have also earned their AA degrees. That event was held on May 4th, 2018. And this year, the district had 9 students receiving admission to Ivy League schools, and the number of students who received AA degrees, which was 43, almost tripled from the year before. And the district's number of graduating seniors accepted into a top 100 college or university increased by over 12% as compared to 2017. We are still working on the individual web-based school scorecards, online scorecards, and those are being created to share successes, program, and data specific to each school. Those will be rolled out in the fall. The tripod parent survey results are trending to the positive when it comes to feedback for community engagement. For example, we have heard that the majority of parents feel connected to their school, and most parents feel that there is a high expectation set for their child. But results show that homework policies may not be clearly communicated in all schools, and so that is definitely a point of opportunity for better messaging at the school level. The district's Osceola Showcase event is being planned for September 5th, 2018, with the president of UF as the guest speaker. A very targeted list of regional economic development leaders is being created for the invitations for the invitees. And the Legacy Club, and remember that is our program for community members ages 60 to 64. They get reduced admission to arts and athletic school events. And if you're ages 65 or plus, you get free admission to those arts and athletic events. We have created very strong partnerships with Good Samaritan, Osceola County Council on Aging, and the Osceola County Retired Teachers Association program. And to date, we have over 200 legacy cards that have been issued, and that number is growing daily.
Sorry, Dana.
That's okay.
We got to go back to master portrait.
Yeah, we need to know what we're done.
So that's goal 4?
Okay, moving on to goal 5.
No, can I
Questions?
just-
Yes, you can say.
And I just want to say something, because I know that we have asked a lot out of Dana and her team. We have, and she can shake her head no, but that's not right, because when
I'll
Mr.
shake my
Packer
head yes.
came up with the newsletters, and I know I'm always pushing the social media, and I know Mr. Weisshire's pushing the social media, and the expansion of what we do with our business and what Mr. Tuckman is doing, I think is fantastic.
Thank you.
And what Heather's doing, and I think it's real, the perception change that's happened within the community because of our willingness to engage people and to put information out there where the people are. It's maybe not necessarily the best place to be, but that's where they are. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all those things. So you guys are doing a fantastic job, and I think that, you know.
Well, it definitely speaks to the trust in the community for our board. We
get
hear it
tons of
every day.
feedback on the social media stuff. I get lots of comments on my tweets. Thank goodness I do, so I know what they say.
Heather agrees with that.
But you can feel, I mean, it's something you can feel
Yeah.
within the community, a perception change, a change for the better of
Sure.
how people feel about their education system in Osceola County. And I think if it wasn't for all the work, and I know it's the vision of these guys, but if it wasn't for your work and your team, then, you know, it'd just be our vision still. I mean, you've got it done, and I think I can speak for all of us, and we appreciate that. And thank you for all the hard work.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Echo, and your spirit and attitude is absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
Couldn't appreciate working with you more.
Thank you.
Goal 5?
I'm going to go on
I don't know how this guy. No, I'm kidding.
Strategy 5A, build the leadership capacity of district and school administrators. I'm hoping I'm going to echo what you guys just talked about, how the stakeholders are actually engaging with the school districts when you look at this slide. Accomplishments for leadership capacity. Advanced Ed final report was approved by Advanced Ed General Council on March the 30th, 2018, and we was re-accredited until 2023, 5 years' time. All district surveys and inventories completed for the fall and spring for 2017 and 2018, and the year before we had 48,000 during the springtime. You can see within the fall and the spring we've actually totaled in surveys 132,937 total surveys, and you can see how many parents, over 12,000 both times in fall and spring, actually engaged in our surveys to show us what the climate, the culture is. And these large sample sizes are given the districts and schools a pulse on what stakeholders feel, the climate, culture and engagement at the schools, which is crucial in the continued development of the strategic plan and the school improvement plan. We need to hear from all our stakeholders. Harvard Institute of Superintendents was attended by Dr. Pierce, Dr. Fritz and Dr. Respers, and the first cohort of principals also attended the Harvard Institute of Strategic Planning, or Leadership. Feedback was very positive on both institutes, so we are now underway to plan and send 3 senior leadership and 3 principals to the Harvard Institute in 2018-2019. Some highlights for next year. The district will also be bringing the very successful district stocktake model, which the board is part of, to all district schools in 2018-2019. This will allow schools to progress monitor the school improvement plan using the school stocktake model for fidelity, as we do with the district stocktake model for the strategic plan. Also in 2018-2019 there will be a focus on principals becoming members of local organisations throughout the district. And that's mine finished. I'll hand it over unless
I think that's very important. I know we've talked about that for a long time, and I know we're working on that, but these principals engaging in their communities, the high school principals, I think is extremely important. And I know and I think it's important to have our teachers engaging in professional organizations as well, but these high school principals being really engaged in the community, I think makes a difference. I bring his name up too much, so I won't even say it today, but we have a good model. He's just a little bit that way. And he does an outstanding job of engaging the community, and you can look at the choice applications for his school, and it'll show you what he's doing over there. So
yeah, I want to brag on Jeff Schwartz. Just met with me last week or the week before, and what he's trying to do to expand his presence in the general Poinciana community as well, and it really echoes exactly what you're talking about.
Got a good teacher at that.
Yeah, he may have. But the intentionality of saying, I want to make sure that people are aware of who we are, what we're doing, and the role that we play in the life of this community, and expanding the work with business partners. I told Jeff and the athletic director that I met with just how proud I was of the approach they're taking during the summer months to really ramp up for the school year. I want to touch on something too that's more important than people may realize, and it's going to sound self-serving, but I don't mean it to sound that way. The advanced ed accreditation piece is really important. Before I ran for the school board, one of the things that was a dangerous point for the school district in not maintaining our accreditation was governance. And it's part of why this board has placed a significant emphasis on making sure that from the top and all throughout the organization that we're leading and governing and acting in the ways that are ultimately conducive to what our stated mission and vision and goals for this organization are. And I'm proud of the work that we've done as a board. I'm proud to work with you guys and Jay and Kelvin, who aren't here, of course. But these are the things that many times our community doesn't understand, the importance and the role and the difference that it really makes. And I'm sure we all still get it, but I will have people still regularly make comments to me about, the pride they have in me or you or the work that any of us are doing, and then the joke that comes with it. But I'll tell you, you've made your school board meetings a lot less enjoyable because we don't tune in on Tuesday evenings to see the antics and shenanigans anymore. You guys have done a great job, and I'm proud to work with the board that we have. And I know that our community is really blessed to have the people leading at all the levels that we have, because we've got the right people sitting in the right seats trying to do the right things. And that's more important. You look at study after study after study, important and effective governance at the school board level is incredibly important to what happens in the life of any school community. So I don't want to miss that because I'm proud of the guys that I work with and the superintendent. But I was talking
She's
about
okay too.
I'm going to hand over back to Ms. Schaefer for 5B.
So I get to close with customer service, and we've made great gains there as well. To date, nearly 6,000 employees have completed the online Moodle course for professional development, outlining the district's standards and expectations for outstanding customer service. 52 schools and departments applied for the district's new Red Carpet Awards program, and we're not handing out awards just to hand out awards. We involved community stakeholders to participate in the judging process to provide some accountability. So there were calls made to departments, there were visits made to the schools, and we're actually going to hand out those Red Carpet School and Department Awards at our administrative welcome back in August 2018. So we hope that you guys will help Dr. Pace do that. It's going to mean a lot. And I can honestly say the schools and departments that are getting it deserve it. So we're very proud of that. I'll turn it back to Dr. Pace.
You know, Dr. Pace, how important this is to me. I mean, we're not just, and we're not a monopoly anymore. I mean, still kind of, but certainly there's other options out there, and this is important. And I think we're on the right track. So.
Well, I would just like to say a special thank you to the board for really engaging this morning in this conversation. I know it's a tremendous investment of time and energy, but it really does drive our work. Your feedback is incredibly important, and the questions that you ask, the suggestions that you make, we really take to heart as we move forward in what we might want to do next. And I want to say thank you to the entire team for being here. While not everybody sits at the table, every single person in this room and so many more have a hand in the work that you've heard about today. And I couldn't be more proud of the work that they do every day to make a difference for kids in our community. So thanks to all of you.
Thank you. Before we wrap up, two things. One, I want to just say I'm sorry. I know I got here late and you guys were waiting for me to start. I didn't realize that I was the cog in the wheel. I didn't realize that we only had 3 of us out of 5 here today, but I do apologize. I wasn't just at home or sitting at Starbucks. I was at another meeting, but I do apologize. I know you guys had to wait. The second thing I just wanted to touch on, it actually goes back to the talent management piece we were talking about. And I know that we're working to continue to try to grow our own in Osceola County, but I'd like to expand that conversation a little bit further. What is it that we're really doing to encourage students from a very young age to look at teaching as a valuable profession and the difference they can make to invest right back here into our own community? And so that's something that we can continue to expand on in our future talks with our conference and workshop today together and otherwise. But I think there's really neat opportunity for us to talk to our young people about the value that they can play in the lifeblood of any community, but hopefully Osceola County in becoming teachers.
And I think some of the best recruiters could be teachers in the classrooms.
Oh, I agree.
And I know a lot of good teachers that make jokes, oh, you don't want to be a teacher, meaning it's kind of tongue in cheek. I think part of customer service is realizing when you say that, if the student didn't realize that's a tongue in cheek response, you're pushing them away.
Yeah.
So it's important coming for our people who are face-to-face with students every day, if they do love their job and they do love their profession, to relay that.
Yeah. And Lance is a great example. Lance said to me, he goes to school in Orange County, and he said that to me, that one of his teachers had made a comment to him like, oh, I want to be a teacher, how about whatever the narrative was. And he said, you're on the school board, talk to me about that type of thing. And so I started just kind of talking about my perception and the value that I know teachers played, and even me being sitting at this table today. These are Osceola people that invested in me. I don't know if you were in the session the other day. I don't think you were. The gentleman was talking about the difference that a teacher made in him, and that ultimately that was the reason why he ultimately became a teacher, and then an AP, and then a principal, and then a superintendent, and now he travels the country speaking into other people's lives about the impact and the power, and how that legacy is just continuing on, because now he has students that are coming up to him and saying, I'm a teacher because of you, and he's going, no, actually I was a teacher because of her, no, I was a teacher. So that legacy that we can talk about, continue to expand and build in our community is vital. So I want to continue the conversation a little further.
Mr. Thacker, you have anything else before we wrap up on anything?
No.
No? Mr. Weishauer, anything else? I'm going to bring it up one more time. I know I did a couple years ago, and board shut me down if you want to, but I saw it online. I think Polk County just did a kind of a rebranding, did a logo redesign contest with their school. I know we don't look at me like that. So
He was buttering you up, really.
I would
Yeah,
certainly,
I see that.
I would certainly like to see that, but if there's not any board, I don't mind the seal. Let's call that the seal.
I like your picture in our logo, Ricky. You look good.
The big one, long hair.
I know last time we did some of the online design stuff. I mean, maybe this time, I needed Mr. Soto here today, and he wasn't here to help me. But actually, what Polk County did was use their students.
Yeah.
And they did a contest with their whole student. Again, and I think Mr. Thacker said it, and he's right on for me anyway when it comes to creative design. I don't know what I want, but I'll know it when I see it. If that's something we can do, that won't take away from a lot of the other great things we're doing, maybe we could engage our community, engage our kids in that. I'd certainly like to see something, but that's just me.
Hey, I'm all in. I just didn't like where we ended up.
No, I didn't either the other time, and then I was gone. I think I was headed to Alaska, and you guys had a meeting and just shot my whole deal down.
Shit, can't miss a meeting.
Can't miss a meeting. I got to be here. So that's it. Not a big deal. I'd certainly, if that's something we can do, I'd love to see what our kids can come up with. Other than that, we're adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.